Chapter 1321, Supreme Yang Transmutation Radiance, II. Dong-A King Sea. The Dong-A King Sea spanned a vast area and contained many islands, the most famous of which was White Sand Island at the easternmost edge. Dense forests covered the island, hot springs boiled, and water veins and fire veins intertwined, forming a remarkable spectacle. Such scenery would be considered merely average inland, but it was prime treasured land at the edge of the outer sea. It had once been the mountain gate of the leading immortal gate of the region, the prime spirit gate, yet now it seemed rather lively with constant comings and goings. After passing through various cultivation sites that were half new and half old, the grand hall at the peak finally possessed an air of authority. Spirit formations shimmered with light, the doors of the cave dwelling were tightly shut, and a cultivator in white golden Taoist robes was meditating with eyes closed. No one knew how long had passed before he finally let out a deep breath. The heavenly light at the center of his eyebrows flickered faintly, illuminating the hall on all sides. After taking that spirit pill, my cultivation has truly advanced by leaps and bounds. Li Ziming had used two great medicines that would make countless Purple Mansion Realm cultivators envious to refine this supreme Yin Dao spirit pill. He had obtained 3 in total, and had consumed one before entering seclusion to accelerate his cultivation. This spirit pill was refined by him and used by him. Thus, not only was its absorption extremely fast, its effects were also excellent, greatly shortening the time needed to cultivate his divine ability. Now, the Heaven-Venerating Gate had finally been trained to nearly halfway completion and could already be considered initial mastery. The first divine ability of a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator was relatively simpler. After all, it was already a divine ability and did not require cultivation from the Immortal Foundation. However, Li Ziming's path had been full of setbacks, as he was either injured or fleeing for his life. Taking this pill made up for the time he had wasted and even allowed him to progress much faster. It would be best if I could obtain some bright Yang-aligned treasures. Ancient spirit artifacts are far too precious. If Yunxiu were willing to lend me the Hui River map, I would advance 1,000 miles in a single day. He assessed the contents of his storage pouch. Although his condition was excellent, the true profound heart cleansing pill had already been used up. He felt uneasy without Purple Mansion Realm healing pills. This is a good opportunity to leave seclusion and refine some pills. Moreover, the island has been trembling occasionally these past few days. Something may have happened outside, so I should go and take a look. Li Ziming stepped out of the cave dwelling. The hall was silent and empty. Several cultivators stood guard outside the hall, but even as Li Ziming walked straight out, they remained completely unaware, standing quietly in place. Li Ziming found this place suitable and entered seclusion on the spot after Tinglin had departed. He casually seized 2 or 3 cultivators and had them watch over the island, so that group of devil cultivators would not come to refine blood qi. He had been worried that these people might abuse his reputation, but he had given clear instructions. Now, seeing that he did not recognize any of them, his expression cooled slightly as he took a single step into the great void. His figure immediately transformed into light and vanished, soon forming atop another high platform. As expected, he saw a group of Qi Cultivation Realm cultivators gathered together, their expressions grave as they discussed something. This group of Qi Cultivation Realm cultivators was quite respectful. A fine jade table was set out, with all kinds of cultivators seated on both sides. The immortal seat at the highest point was empty, clearly symbolizing Li Ziming. Even if Li Ziming did not leave seclusion, he was still worthy of being displayed as a signboard. He treated the formation on the high platform as though it did not exist, stepped inside, and manifested beside the imposing immortal seat, frowning as he surveyed the scene. When this white golden figure appeared, the entire platform instantly fell silent. The leader froze for a moment before his face turned pale with shock. He collapsed as though he had seen a ghost, kowtowing as he cried out, "Greetings, Taoist Master." Once these words rang out, chaos erupted. Chairs scraped, wine was spilled, and hurried footsteps rang out all at once. In the end, only the dull thuds of kowtowing remained. When Li Ziming turned around, the only sight was cultivators prostrated on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Li Ziming spoke softly. "Where are the others? I said you were not to abuse my reputation. Is that something you cannot understand?" The cultivator at the very front, his hair completely white, was so frightened that he kowtowed without stopping and said respectfully, "Taoist Master, they are cultivators from the Dong-A King Sea. All of them heard that a Taoist master was in seclusion on White Sand Island, so they voluntarily came here to trade. Now, White Sand Island has become the largest marketplace in the Dong-A King Sea. No sect has been established." Li Ziming raised an eyebrow and glanced downward. As expected, he saw buildings that were half new and half old. A massive formation left behind by an unknown immortal gate from years past had been put to use by the cultivators of the Danga King Sea, allowing them to truly cling to life in this place. The Prime Spirit Gate was destroyed. The few Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators of the Danga King Sea are gone, and demonic creatures run rampant. Everyone looks to White Sand Island for safety and has settled nearby. Li Ziming immediately understood. A Taoist master of his stature was someone everyone knelt before in the mainland. How much more so would that be in the barren and sparsely populated Outer Sea? The Danga King Sea was already impoverished, and upon seeing such a great figure, the cultivators had no thought of resistance. United from top to bottom, they clung to him like ants, hoping to borrow even a trace of protection. So this is the aftermath left behind by the destruction of the Prime Spirit Gate. Li Ziming frowned. Soon an old man was carried up to him. At last there was someone at the Foundation Establishment Realm, but unfortunately everything below his abdomen had been bitten off. With a pale face, he tilted his head back and spoke in broken phrases. Taoist Master, the demonic creatures are rampant. We truly had no choice. Clearly, the old man also knew that borrowing Li Ziming's authority was a deadly affair. He even knew that Li Ziming would eventually leave seclusion, yet he had merely been quenching thirst with poison all along. The surroundings were silent with fear. No one dared to speak. Li Ziming could tell from a glance that this man was afflicted with frost poison and did not have long to live. If he had not taken in some blood qi, he would not have lasted until now. Li Ziming sighed inwardly, yet his expression remained cold. He glanced at the old man and frowned. Stand up and speak. His bright yang divine ability manifested. The old man's legs instantly grew back. The frost poison vanished into nothingness, and the gloom shrouding his face dispersed. Covering his face, he wept and fell to his knees with a thud. Li Ziming asked, since you borrowed my authority, where did these demonic creatures find the courage? The old man trembled as he replied. They were somewhat wary at first. Later, they gathered information, captured a few cultivators to interrogate them, and then asked the noble scions of other seas. After that, they no longer believed. These demonic creatures did not understand the situation well and naturally did not know that Li Ziming was cultivating there. Unless they questioned the Dragon Clan, asking anyone else would have been useless. Li Ziming could not be bothered to move and turned to the side. Pass down the order. Tell those demon generals to roll over here and see me. Unexpectedly, dark clouds had already gathered outside the moment his words left his mouth. Waves surged violently, and sharp howls that tore through the air rang out. Everyone looked up to see the sky darkened and the sea raging. If one stood on the high platform and looked outward, one could see a host of shrimp soldiers and crab generals standing atop the waves, clustered around a sinister young man in dark green robes with whiskers growing from his forehead. Whoa! The demonic creature's voice boomed like thunder. Its twin whiskers jutted fiercely into the air as it stood atop the waves. Suddenly, the great void tore open above him, and a streak of golden-colored light appeared. Palm. Before the crowd of demons could see clearly, a palm had already lashed across the demon general's face. The head of the young man in dark green robe spun several times in an instant and snapped backward, leaving only the pitch-black back of his head facing the island, while his blood-soaked face stared blankly at the demons behind him, eyelids twitching mechanically. Only then did everyone see clearly the man clad in a white golden Taoist robe before him. He had a fiercely gloomy expression. Heavenly light shone between this man's eyebrows as he swept his gaze around, causing the demonic creatures on the waves to fall like rain. He withdrew his eyes and stepped into the great void, vanishing. Thud. Li Ziming appeared upon the immortal seat of the high platform and casually threw the demon general onto the ground, as though tossing away trash. The demonic creature was natural. Lie not dead since his vitality was tenacious. He did not dare twist his head back and kept his chest pressed to the ground as his lips trembled. The assembled cultivators showed little joy and instead were too frightened to speak. A dignified late-stage Foundation Establishment Realm demon general, felled by a single slap. Li Ziming had been disturbed without reason several times during his cultivation. Although it was only ground tremors and he was not at a crucial stage, disturbing the cultivation of a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator meant this demonic creature could die 100 times and still not repay the offense. Moreover, he only wished to remain in seclusion. Although exposing his whereabouts now was not particularly dangerous, and others might not know which Taoist master was present, this demonic creature forcing the cultivators of the Danga King Sea to rely on his name was ultimately an unpleasant matter. In the mainland, a Foundation Establishment Realm demonic creature could only be a demon general, yet it was already called a demon king in this desolate place. This demonic creature cultivated pristine water and resembled a shrimp-like flood dragon. Li Ziming restrained his temper, smiled faintly, and asked, "What background do you have to dare disturb my cultivation?" Seeing that the demonic creature only begged for mercy and could not explain anything clearly, Li Ziming knew exactly what sort of thing the demonic creature was. He casually kicked the demonic creature in the chest and sealed his cultivation. His heart was icy cold as he thought, pristine water again, and a shrimp-like flood dragon at that. Running into me counts as your misfortune. He lifted the demonic creature, preparing to return and refine pills, only to notice that everyone around was trembling. Li Ziming silently glanced over them, and even more people began to shiver. The old man then came forward with a pale face. This time it was from fear rather than frost poison. He knelt at Li Ziming's feet, trembling like chaff, and haltingly said, Taoist master, 36 days ago the Western upper sect of the Western Curtain Sea, the all-seeing immortal gate, sent people to seek you, saying they came to visit the Taoist master. Li Ziming was slightly surprised and said, "That is quite well-informed news." The other party immediately began to kowtow in terror. Li Ziming said casually, "Did they say what they sought me for, and what background this Tao lineage has?" The old man shook his head repeatedly and kowtowed again and again before saying, "They only said that someone had made an introduction." Li Ziming's expression grew thoughtful. He released the demonic creature in his hand and sat down on the seat, his ire toward the demon flood dragon easing considerably. "Someone made an introduction. I do not know who it was, but it clearly means they already know my identity, yet still hold a friendly attitude and wish to meet me. If put this way, this foolish demonic creature may not truly be reckless. Perhaps the other side has some urgent matter and used a fate-divine ability to fan the waves, trying to force me out of seclusion." Li Ziming pondered for a few breaths, looked at the demonic creature on the ground, and secretly shook his head as he thought, it should simply be an outer-sea demonic creature without a brain. Otherwise, this would be far too rude. Chapter 13:22, Yin Banishing Transformation, I. Li Ziming swept his gaze over the group of cultivators and frowned slightly. He knew that with more and more Purple Mansion cultivators closing themselves off to cultivate here, remaining in this place was becoming increasingly inconvenient. What could be stirred up today might disrupt him tomorrow and force him out of seclusion, leaving everything at the mercy of others. It is not that I distrust Xiuqui or Nine Mounds. White Sand Island can still serve as a place to leave messages, but it is no longer suitable for closed-door cultivation. It would be better to find another territory. With that thought, he no longer had any intention of remaining on White Sand Island. He cast another glance at the uneven mix of cultivators below and frowned inwardly. If I simply leave with a flick of my sleeve, this place will suffer again in a few years. Whether it is an immortal gate from the Western Curtain Sea or the surrounding powers, they may not dare come openly at first, but probing is unavoidable. However, if he continued to stay here, matters would only grow larger. Leaving aside the Dragon Clan, even the great Boon bronze-colored temple of the Peacock Sea would likely send people to inquire once they heard that a Purple Mansion realm power had appeared in nearby waters. Those monks were sly, and who knew what trouble might arise then. He paused briefly and finally said, "I have traveled the many seas and merely passed by this place. I did not expect you all to gather on this island and receive my protection. Now that I am leaving these waters, our destined ties have come to an end." When the cultivators below heard his words, they realized they would not be pursued and all felt a wave of relief. Yet upon hearing that he was leaving, fear rose again, and they bowed with tears in their eyes. Li Ziming merely said, "The demonic creatures of the Dong King Sea are running rampant. Since I have come, I cannot simply watch as they wreak havoc." If Li Ziming was a formation master, modifying the formations of White Sand Island would have been ideal. Unfortunately, he knew nothing of formations, and distributing pills would only sow discord, so he could only take out a few jade slips from his sleeve. These were several cultivation techniques and spell arts from inland regions, far better than the common goods these people carried. Li Ziming tossed the jade slips onto the table and shook his head as he said, "You are each cultivating some miscellaneous arts and cannot even contend with a few demonic creatures. Read through these one by one. For the next 10 or so years, no demonic creatures will dare come. Rely on your own cultivation and pass your Tao lineage onward. I will first make a trip to the Western Curtain Sea. When I return, I will give a bit of guidance to those at sea who have a chance to establish their foundation, and then I will continue traveling the seas." The cultivators were both shocked and delighted. The old man stepped forward a few paces and said through tears, "May we know your honored name? The people of the Dong King Sea are filled with gratitude." Name. Li Ziming had no interest in giving these people a banner to rally under, nor did he want any future trouble blamed on him. Could he really expect these penniless rogue cultivators to produce a few outstanding late-stage Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, or even a Purple Mansion realm cultivator? Since he expected nothing of the sort, leaving behind a name and forming Dao lineage ties would only invite trouble. He turned and left, speaking casually, "There is no need for a name. If you all make less use of blood qi, that will be the best repayment to me." He vanished into the great void, leaving behind a group who still dared not raise their heads. More than 90% of the cultivators broke out in cold sweat and looked toward the old Taoist Wu at those words. The old Taoist continued kowtowing without pause. With the crisis resolved, he relaxed entirely and pondered inwardly. "Fortunately, several juniors of my Wu family are at the right age, and that boy surnamed Han has gone west to train. In this way, my Wu family gains the most." Spiritual energy was sparse in the far sea, and travel through the great void was extremely fast. Li Ziming only traveled for half a day before crossing several seas and arriving at the territory known as the Western Curtain Sea. The seabed of the Western Curtain Sea was extremely shallow, with an average distance of less than 300 meters from the surface. In shallower areas, many islanders waded into the sea to mine reefs in considerable numbers. Most were physically strong and well-fed. Occasionally, a few reef miners drowned and their bodies floated up, yet those around them showed little deep sorrow, their expressions filled more with resignation and surprise. Achieving this under immortal governance was no easy feat. Judging from the expressions and bearing of the common people, life under the rule of the all-seeing immortal gate was not overly harsh. With this understanding, Li Ziming continued westward and soon saw an immortal mountain rising from the sea along with several islands. He did not need to waste much time. The cultivators across the entire island were already in chaos, gathering below his feet. Li Ziming frowned inwardly, so perceptive. This family is no ordinary Dao lineage, and certainly not some outer-sea rogue cultivators who happen to achieve enlightenment. Judging by this response alone, they are already comparable to the Dao lineages of the mainland. Sure enough, he raised his head slightly to see several streaks of escaping light up on the immortal mountain nearby. They raced over at great speed and transformed into two young men in flowing robes. They bowed together and said in unison, "We of the Zhao family of Mount Thistle greet the Taoist master. May we ask if the Taoist master has come here with any instructions?" Li Ziming felt slightly puzzled and thought he had encountered a family affiliated with the all-seeing immortal gate, so he asked, "Is the all-seeing immortal gate located here?" The two young men exchanged glances, their expressions shifting slightly. One of them replied respectfully, "If the Taoist master seeks the all-seeing immortal gate, then it is indeed our Zhao family of Mount Thistle." As he spoke, a figure emerged from the great void. The aged man wore a white feathered robe with a turquoise short robe beneath. His cultivation was only at the early stage of the Purple Mansion realm, even inferior to Li Ziming. Such an elder who had broken through to the Purple Mansion realm in his later years was naturally courteous upon seeing him. He clasped his hands and smiled. "So it is Taoist Master Zheajing. I am Linyi of Mount Thistle. Please come inside so we may speak in detail." When he heard the elder call out his Dao title, Li Ziming pondered briefly and asked tentatively, "Fellow Taoist, you are quite well informed." Taoist Master Linyi smiled immediately and replied, "It was through guidance from the Taoist Master of 9 Mounds that I learned your Dao title. I heard you were cultivating in the Dong King Sea, so I went there to take a look. I happened to encounter the matter of White Sand Island and knew with near certainty that it was you." When Li Ziming heard 9 Mounds' name, his wariness eased slightly. All things considered, 9 Mounds' reputation was far more reliable than Purple Smoke Gate or Ziyuqui. He nodded lightly and replied, "Let us settle nearby." The old Taoist master understood at once. The two traversed the great void and settled into a nearby pavilion. Linyi was likely seeking a favor and appeared very courteous. He had tea served, and a maid carried a crystalline tray with 2 small purple fruits upon it. Linyi said with a smile, "Zheajing plays." Li Ziming did not have a particularly good impression of him and merely nodded in acknowledgement before speaking. "What business do you have to seek for me? Let us speak of it first." The Taoist master immediately grew solemn. "Fellow Taoist need not address me by Dao title. My family does not value such customs. You and I share a connection. My surname is Yan and my given name is Dushui. You may simply call me Dushui." Seeing his sincere expression, Li Ziming replied, "May I ask where this connection lies?" Yan Dushui nodded and replied, "You are a descendant of ancient Wei, while I am a descendant of the ancient Yan state. In the early days there were marriages with the imperial lineage. At that time, the imperial procession departed from Yan Mountain and traveled south in a grand array." This was unexpected news to Li Ziming. He looked at him again and asked, "The ancient Yan state?" Yan Dushui did not know whether Li Ziming believed him. He raised his brows with a hint of melancholy and said in a weary voice, Yan and Wei once watched over and aided each other. When the Wei state unified the north, our Yan state remained beyond the passes to balance the 16 Hu. Later, both families were shattered by Hu and Jai Buddhist cultivators. My family carried the Dao lineage of Yan state and fled all the way here. Only today do we finally meet. It has been several hundred years since we last saw a descendant of Wei, yet my family longs for the past. Even these islands and mountain ranges are named after places of our former state. Many family members even changed their surnames to Yan in remembrance of what once was. Li Ziming felt no real sense of closeness in his heart and instead silently shook his head. The first half of Yan Dushui's words might have been true, but the further he went, the more hollow they sounded. The Wei state had not failed to restore itself in the past, and descendants of the Wei's Li lineage had circulated outward long ago. It was impossible that none could be found at all. The descendants of Yan state were clearly not as close as the Kui family, and their eventual submission to Wei state rule was likely unwilling. Now, with Li Ziming having reached the Purple Mansion realm, they had come close only after inquiring through 9 mounds. They were merely joining the excitement. There was plainly little genuine sentiment involved. Li Ziming merely clasped his hands and said, It is often said that my family descends from the Wei's Li lineage, but in truth, we do not know our ancestral origins. It is only because my bright Yang achieved the Tao that various families made such conjectures. I understand, Yan Dushui nodded in understanding and replied, My family does not act ostentatiously outside. When our state's mandate collapsed, we fled with several immortal gates. By the time we reached this place, almost all who remained were members of the royal house. We borrowed the names of those sects for use, and when going out, we also called ourselves the all-seeing Immortal Gate. The name of Yan State was clearly no match for that of Wei State, burdened with such heavy karma. These people had muddled through half willingly and half reluctantly for years. When Li Ziming fell silent, the old man immediately continued, this time in inviting an old acquaintance, I truly do have a matter to request. He said solemnly, My family accidentally discovered a treasure in Asurta. In territory and have waited many years for it. It requires assistance from a bright Yang divine ability. Previously, we also approached Taoist Master Yangya of the Kui family in the Western Sea. But whether it was the Eastern Sea or the mainland, he would no longer intervene and wished to settle the karmic ties of his ancestors. Our matter clearly involved the Kui family's forebears, so he was unwilling to act. Chapter 1323, Yin Banishing Transformation, II. Li Ziming had also heard of Taoist Master Yangya. He was a member of the Kui family who had split off to the Western Sea and had little contact with the main lineage. He had not expected the separation to be so absolute. After a brief hesitation, he asked, What treasure is it? Yan Dushui lowered his voice and said with great seriousness, A portion of banished essence. Li Ziming asked in confusion, What kind of treasure is that? The other party paused first, then avoided the topic and said with a smile, Fellow Taoists need only offer a small measure of assistance. After the matter is accomplished, please keep it confidential for my family. Mount Thistle will certainly provide a generous reward. He smiled slightly and continued, This item grows upon a stretch of soul-tuning mulberry wood. After the matter is completed, I will take the treasure itself, while the soul-tuning mulberry wood that serves as its host can be given to you. Any additional requests may be raised afterward. Although soul-tuning mulberry wood is only a foundation establishment realm spirit item, it is exceptionally precious because it is rarely produced in the present world. Most specimens are found within grotto heavens and secret realms, with a small portion obtainable in the southern border. This material could be used to craft soul lamps of excellent quality, greatly reducing the influence of Purple Mansion realm divine abilities when revealing life and death. One had to know that this was a material used only for the soul lamps of cultivators from the 3 major sects. If one's own family could possess a portion, predictions of fortune and calamity for the direct lineage would become far more accurate, making it a rather important spirit item. Li Ziming still remembered Minghui of the Lotus Temple asking him to search for this spirit item. If he ended up with some to spare, he did not know whether that monk would even accept it. However, Li Ziming had always held a poor impression of monks and remained wary of them, so he merely stroked his beard without speaking. After a few breaths, Li Ziming deliberately said, I still hope that fellow Taoists can explain clearly. If I do not even know what kind of treasure it is, and whether it might involve some trouble, how could I agree? No one knew what 9 Mounds' people had said to Yan Dushui, but the old man seemed to trust him quite a bit. He hesitated, nodded, and then said in a low voice, Then I will no longer keep it hidden. The 12 essences originate from pure essence. The various essences were born beneath the profound wind, yet one essence had its fruition attainment seized at the moment of its birth, and fell into the boundless underworld, becoming a hazy and unseen Tao. That was an extremely ancient matter. This essence was locked away, while its fruition attainment fell into the underworld and underwent all manner of transformations. Its manifestation in the present world grew rarer and rarer. It was said that it could still be reclaimed and reattained in those days, but the difficulty was immense, and no one was willing to gnaw on such a hard bone. Only the ancient immortal Tao still maintained some cultivation of it. As this essence merged more and more with the underworld, it in turn nourished the underworld, and the qi manifesting in the present world dwindled rapidly. Its Tao lineage was soon cut off, and it rarely appeared in the present world thereafter. In ancient times, this essence still had a name, but as its traces grew fewer and fewer, people came to call this event the Yin banishing transformation. That name was buried in the historical records. By the near ancient era, it was called the essence of banishment, and this name has been passed down to the present. Even those who know of its existence can only refer to it as banished essence. He was clearly eager for the other party to take part in this matter. He spoke in great detail, his expression full of emotion, as he continued, "The soul-tuning mulberry wood and 9 refined soul essence of today are all derived from this essence. One could say it belongs to the immortal Tao, yet if one were to measure it precisely, it has only left behind traces so faint they are almost imperceptible. The reason why crushing jade talismans, command tokens, and similar items can serve as warnings today can also be traced back to this banished essence fruition attainment." Li Ziming nodded thoughtfully. Yan Dushui's gaze grew deep as he spoke softly. The Yin banishing transformation also provided a shortcut for a certain revered one to seize another fruition attainment. It even involves the secrets of several Tao lineages. Alas, the matters within are tangled and complex, and the closer they are to the present era, the less they can be spoken of. Please forgive me. Yan Dushui soon fell silent, while Li Ziming asked softly, "In that case, fellow Taoist truly has some fortune, to even be able to reach something from the underworld." Yan Dushui shook his head heavily, sighed, and replied, "That is not how it is. My ancestors fled here and managed this place for dozens of generations. By chance, they formed a connection with a certain figure of the underworld judiciary. This item was a treasure he left behind when he departed. Unfortunately, my family has no means to move it. We can only watch anxiously. It was not until I achieved the Purple Mansion realm and visited 9 mounds several times with sincere requests for guidance that I finally obtained the method to retrieve it. Yet it requires the bright Yang Divine Ability Radiance under heaven together with the ancient Divine Ability Emperor's mandate or assistance from the Sheji Dao lineage. One only needs to display the divine ability." Li Ziming remained fairly calm in his heart and did not harbor much suspicion toward this request. For one, the value of soul-tuning mulberry wood was not particularly great, merely rare. Mainland cultivators could search for it in the southern border, and its level of preciousness would even be somewhat reduced. If this were truly meant to lure me, the reward offered is far too untempting. Moreover, radiance under heaven is still far beyond my reach. From this perspective, it was likely just a small effort. With 9 mounds vouching from the side, and Taoist Master Yuandao of the Profound Fire of the 3 Phases Guard acting with great decisiveness and clearly explaining the aftermath of the peacock matter, Li Ziming had formed a rather good impression and was willing to believe it. Still, he smiled faintly and nodded as he said, "Fellow Taoist overestimates me. Such an advanced fate divine ability as radiance under heaven is not only something I have yet to master, I do not even possess the corresponding method. How could I possibly help you?" Yan Dushui shook his head repeatedly, a carefree smile appearing on his face as he replied, "The Eastern Fire Grotto heaven has manifested, and bright Yang techniques should be everywhere. With fellow Taoists' talent, achieving divine ability at such a young age, how could radiance under heaven be far away? It doesn't matter, this old man still has 100 years of lifespan and should be able to see that day. If I cannot wait until then, we can discuss it again." Li Ziming understood where his confidence came from. In the old man's view, Li Ziming could not possibly avoid using the profound method of continuation as long as he possessed foundation establishment realm techniques, nor could he refrain from cultivating a fate divine ability when 3 divine abilities stood before him at the Purple Mansion threshold. In that case, radiance under heaven would be only a matter of time. He pondered briefly and replied, "Since fellow Taoist has already waited so many years, there is no need to rush. I still have 1 or 2 pills yet to finish refining. May I make a trip to 9 mounds along the way and then return to seek you out?" The only possible flaw in the other party's words was invoking 9 mounds' name. Li Ziming naturally wanted to confirm it to be at ease. Yan Dushui was not surprised, smiled, and nodded as he replied, "It does not matter. I will wait for fellow Taoist here. As for 9 mounds, there is no need for you to make the trip. Senior Lingdu is nearby. Fly a bit west and you will meet him in person." Oh, Li Ziming felt a stir in his heart, while the smile on his face deepened as he replied, "Ha ha, so the senior is here. Then I would be embarrassed to run back to refine pills again." Almost as soon as Yan Dushui finished speaking, Li Ziming grew suspicious and thought, "I suspect it may not be Yan Dushui who wants to take this banished essence, but 9 mounds instead. Could there really be such a coincidence?" Yan Dushui merely smiled and said, "There is an excellent hidden trove in the Western Curtain Sea. 9 mounds sends people to train in these waters every year. This year, the senior personally led people here, arriving at just the right time." Li Ziming replied with a smile, rose into the air following his directions, and sighed softly in his heart, "Is this the Western Curtain Sea of your Mount Thistle, or the Western Curtain Sea of 9 mounds? It is indeed rather humiliating for the hidden troves of the Western Curtain Sea to be taken by their people." Clearly, although Mount Thistle had not fallen to the Sa plight as the Kui family, surviving for so many years meant being constrained by others in certain ways. It was very possible that they had been 9 mounds' vassals for many years. If not for Yan Dushui achieving the Purple Mansion realm, their situation might have been even more miserable. As for whether Yan Dushui achieved the Purple Mansion realm at Mount Thistle or at 9 mounds Mountain, that was even harder to say. So the territory controlled by the 9 mounds Dao lineage has already extended this far. That makes sense. Taoist Master Yuandao's lifespan seems inexhaustible. Whether it is Yan Dushui or some other vassal, what kind of waves could they really stir up? He flew in silence the entire way and soon saw a pillar of light shooting up to the heavens. An old man stood on a flying boat with a smile. Upon seeing Li Ziming, he raised his brows slightly and said with a smile, "Zheajing, to think I would meet fellow Taoist here." "Greetings, Senior." Li Ziming actually had a fairly good impression of Senior Lingdu. Seeing him like this, he temporarily suppressed the doubts in his heart, performed a salute, and replied, "This junior came at the request of Mount Thistle to obtain some sort of essence. It was said the information came from you. I did not dare delay and came along the way to ask about it." Lingdu suddenly understood, invited him onto the boat, and shook his head as he said, "He begged bitterly over this matter for a long time. I thought it would also be beneficial to you, so I revealed a little. I only mentioned that you cultivate bright yang. I did not expect that fellow to have such quick wits. Putting everything together, he must have identified you at once." Li Ziming nodded slightly and saw Lingdu sigh as he continued, "You have met him as well. He must have poured out quite a lot to you. Perhaps he is a bit too eager for quick success, but once this matter came out of his mouth, his descendants will likely have no chance even to barely survive if he cannot retrieve it." He glanced at Li Ziming, seeming to understand his concerns, and smiled as he said, "You must understand that if this item remains in his hands, it truly cannot be handled or publicized. It indeed has to be delivered into the hands of our 9 mounds. But to 9 mounds, the item will not run away just by staying there. Whether he retrieves it now or 9 mounds retrieves it in the future makes no difference." When he finished speaking, Li Ziming immediately understood. Clearly, 9 mounds had not known from the beginning that Mount Thistle possessed such a treasure. Once Yan Dushui made his request, 9 mounds became aware of it. Although the item was precious, it was not an urgent matter to 9 mounds. Yan Dushui was advanced in age, and if he retrieved it, he would naturally present it. If he failed to do so and passed away one day, 9 mounds would still have the opportunity to take it. But for Yan Dushui, offering it himself and having it taken after his death carried completely different meanings. Li Ziming stroked his beard and nodded, the doubts in his heart suddenly dispelled, as he heard Lingdu said with a sigh, "After all, we have known each other for many years, and it is hard to watch him fall to such a state. Setting aside my identity within the 9 mounds Dao lineage, on a personal level I still hope he can find a turning point. That is why I revealed a bit. I ask for your understanding, Zheajing." "This junior understands." Li Ziming's heart immediately became clear. Lingdu had explained things plainly, showing that he truly valued him. By obtaining this information, Li Ziming had effectively grasped the other party's bottom line. As long as his requests were not excessive and did not offend too many people, he could even ask this Purple Mansion realm cultivator to take action. If Taoist Master Yuandao's assistance could be attributed to displaying the bearing of 9 mounds, then the deliberate care shown by Lingdu here was even more apparent. Although the 9 mounds Dao lineage never spoke openly of helping others and disliked deep involvement, its favoritism toward its own always manifested both overtly and subtly, leaving Li Ziming feeling both pleased and uneasy. After all, assistance from a Dao lineage of this level often comes with expectations or guidance. Even so, everything up to this point bore signs of goodwill. He still nodded silently, performed a salute toward the 9 mounds Taoist master, and replied with genuine sincerity, "Thank you, Senior." Chapter 1324, Unyielding Backbone I. Beikou Prefecture. Yellow sand swarmed the city, whipped upward by raging winds until it surged into the heavens, mixed with pervasive metal poison that forced passing cultivators to squint. An elderly cultivator in white rode the wind through the swirling dust toward the city. The blast made him squint involuntarily, and he frowned as he looked below. How strange this should be near the capital Immortal Dao. It is at least a purple mansion realm power, allowing metal poison to rage unchecked like this. Who knows how many thousands of common folk have died, such a lack of virtuous governance. He glanced again with faint discomfort, guiding his wind descent as he muttered inwardly, no wonder. I heard they're locked in a standoff with the Moongaze immortal family on the river. Once true fire was ignited, who would still care about metal poison? The Li family is famed for the orthodox Dao and would not stoop to such acts. Then this must be capital Immortal Dao acting deliberately, forcing the Li family to divert their strength to rescue people. What grievous sin! He let out a deep sigh. After hesitating for a moment, he finally shook his head and thought, I should still go down and take a look. Back when I followed the general to resist Buddhist cultivators, the local people never suffered like this. Now that the immortal Dao flourishes, such calamities instead arise. The old Taoist passed through the clouds and indeed saw scattered bones lying about, yet no one on the streets paid them any heed, as if these mortals did not exist at all. Instead, everyone was crowding around the tea house. He halted his Dharma light atop an eave and saw, to his surprise, a Qi cultivation realm cultivator engaged in combat with someone at the embryonic breathing realm. Huh, the old Taoist exclaimed. He stared blankly for a moment. The embryonic breathing realm youth was wielding a Dharma sword, cutting down each incoming spell. Though it looked extremely strenuous, he not only held off the Qi cultivation realm cultivator, but even displayed a hint of fluid elegance. Oh, the old Taoist murmured. He stepped forward 2 paces and stroked his beard as he observed the match. He saw the youth standing on the platform, blood staining his face even as his bearing inspired awe. His unyielding pride was like a sharp sword thrust straight toward the heavens. The sword in his hand grew ever fiercer, making onlookers itch to clap in admiration. The brocade-clad young master facing him stood in stark contrast. He looked livid, and his hands trembled so badly he could not even form a proper spell seal. His eyes bulged red as he shouted harshly, You, what demonic art did you use to block my Qi cultivation realm spell arts? The youth opposite him was only at the peak of the embryonic breathing realm, yet his temperament stood worlds apart. His robes were tattered, but his expression was resolute as he lifted his chin and said, You are but a frog at the bottom of a well. Have you never heard that human will can triumph over heaven? I possess fierce courage, an unbending backbone, and ambitions that tower to the clouds. With these alone, even if I am a mere mortal, divine abilities would not harm me in the slightest, let alone a trifling Qi cultivation realm like you. You could not do anything to me when you were at the peak of the embryonic breathing realm. Now that you have stepped into the Qi cultivation realm, you are still nothing but trash. Take this sword. As his words rang out, wisps of white Qi leapt from the blade. They not only shredded the spells before him into fragments, but also crossed the air and slashed at the brocade-clad youth. Blood sprayed out as the brocade-clad youth fell to the ground with a ghastly expression, writhing in agony as he cried out hoarsely, How could this be? I cultivated for 10 years without a single day of respite. Losing to you once should have been enough. I poured in endless effort just to obtain a strand of spiritual Qi and barely broke through the Qi cultivation realm within 3 months. Why should I still lose to your 3 months of cultivation? The sword-wielding youth slowly walked forward, his blade pointed straight ahead as he said coldly, Ridiculous. You ask me why? Why not ask those cultivators whose innate ability is inferior to yours why their 10 years of cultivation fell short of you? Ask those with poorer family backgrounds than yours why their 10 years of cultivation still lagged behind you. Only a pampered wastrel like you, untouched by the mortal world, would still delude himself into demanding fairness. If a beggar on the street were to pick up a treasure tomorrow and erase your 10 years of cultivation with a flick of his finger, would you not also ask why? The wastrel was struck dumb. He shifted 5 centimeters along the ground, leaving a trail of blood behind, while the surrounding crowd stood motionless like carved statues. The sword-wielding youth planted a foot on his face as he smiled. If cultivation were portioned solely by effort, then the donkey turning the millstone would be the greatest immortal under heaven. My ambition soars to the clouds. 6 months of cultivation is enough for me to kill you. You have no choice other than accepting it. People like you cannot change anything, yet always pretend not to see. What you should truly resent are spiritual orifices and luck. Those are the most unfair things of all. How many people did you suppress with your family background? Now that it is your turn, you complain about lineage and opportunity, and still feel jealous and unwilling. The wastrel's eyes widened in fury as he groaned, I did not. But every expression changed before he could finish. The looks from the people around him shifted from pity to disgust, and shame surfaced on his face as the youth kicked him squarely in the chest. Crack! No one knew how many bones had broken, but the wastrel was instantly paralyzed. The youth slowly looked down at him, the expression on his face vanishing as a mysterious smile appeared on his face. The world does not change according to your will. Do you understand? There is nothing unfair about it. The fact that I stand here is the greatest fairness. The wastrel did not understand a word he said. When he saw the sword rising, his face changed drastically, and he hurriedly begged for mercy. Contempt appeared on the youth's face as he sneered coldly. Wang Jai, you lose in combat and immediately kneel to beg for your life. You have neither an unyielding backbone, a heart that seeks the Tao, nor ambition that reaches the clouds. All that remains is a snake in rat's existence, wagging your tail and begging for mercy. Spare you once, and you still do not repent. You deserve to die. The wastrel could only howl in agony, but a thunderous shout rang out from the air above. How dare you? Do not harm my son. A figure appeared in the sky as a massive palm pressed down through the air. The crowd erupted in cries of alarm as overwhelming pressure descended from above. The Lord of Beikou City, Wang Bakong. Lin Feng is finished now. Yet Lin Feng showed no fear at all as he stood unmoving. At the same time, an old Taoist appeared and lightly received the strike, sending bones on the ground flying in all directions as dark blood splashed everywhere. I am Bai Yinzi. It is rare to see such a talent. I ask you, fellow Taoist, to restrain yourself. Wang Bakong's originally imposing face twisted with rage as he shouted harshly, where did this rogue cultivator come from, to dare to interfere in my affairs? Bai Yinzi had only reached the Foundation establishment realm by luck and was far weaker than his opponent. Yet unwilling to let such raw jade be destroyed, his scalp tingled as he quickly scooped up the youth and rode the wind away, calling out loudly, since the young master is not dead, an apology will suffice. Why must the city lord resort to such force? The youth stood silently behind him and clasped his fists in thanks. Senior, thank you for your righteous intervention. Lin Feng is grateful. Chapter 1325, Unyielding Backbone II. Bai Yinzi shook his head, keeping an eye on the potential pursuers behind them as he said, it was only a casual act. Let us find a place to settle in Jiangbei and talk things through properly. He had completely forgotten about the matter of metal poison. Wang Bakong glared furiously and was about to give chase, but the brocade-clad youth on the ground suddenly groaned. The tension broke as he fainted away. Wang Bakong had no choice but to stop, his eyes reddening as he cried out in distress, that little beast uses such vicious methods. Tears welled in his fierce eyes as he lifted the youth and ground his teeth. Wang, he refused to see me and made me wait at the foot of the mountain for months. That is how this man took advantage of the opening and brought such calamity upon you. His expression darkened as he held his eldest son, vicious thoughts surging in his heart. So be it, so be it. I thought that being close to the capital Immortal Tao, and with my lineage close to Wang He, we would naturally receive some care. I never imagined he could be this heartless. Wang Bakong swept a sharp gaze around, and the people below immediately whispered among themselves and dispersed. Guards stepped forward from both sides, only to be struck twice by him, sent flying off the platform as they spat blood. Useless, he issued an order in a low, grim voice. Call someone over. Is Wang Quan also cultivating in the Jiangbei region? A cultivator at the side nodded hurriedly and replied quietly, it is said that he is cultivating in this area. No one knows why he does not return to his own lineage's mountain. Whoever goes to visit is turned away without meeting him. I understand. Wang Bakong turned and left with the youth in his arms. Wang Jai's face was covered in cold sweat as he suddenly awoke, his lips trembling as he muttered about unyielding backbone and ambitions that reached the clouds. Moongai's Lake. Another early autumn had arrived. The trees by the lake shed red and yellow, leaves in scattered profile. Xian, the old man, rode the wind swiftly over and descended before the main hall. Seeing two figures standing inside the hall, he bowed without stepping over the threshold. The person seated above wore a crimson robe, holding a brush in midair with a contemplative expression. The one beside him was dressed in palace attire. She was dignified in appearance, with a green spherical bead cradled in her hand. When he saw Buzhai come to pay his respects, the man seated above raised his brow, then turned to Li Minggong and said, Great Aunt's words make sense. Since Zhuang Pingai is returning to the Great Desert, it is only right to give him a warning. Have him pass a message to Zhuang Cheng and tell them not to go to Jiangbei. He pondered for a moment and continued, say that our family is engaged in a major conflict with the capital Immortal Tao, involving the Purple Mansion realm, and that it is extremely dangerous. Tell the Zhuang family not to come east, lest something unforeseen happen. Zhuang Cheng is already a well-known figure in the Great Desert, so he should not ignore such advice. As for how effective it will be." Li Jianqian let out a faint sigh and said, "That will depend on the will of those above. If they are already meant to be involved, there is no avoiding it no matter how one tries." Li Minggong nodded slightly and Li Jianqian turned. "Report." Only then did Buzhai enter the hall and bow, speaking respectfully. "My lord Wang Jai has been defeated for the second time. It is said that he nearly lost his life this time, and only survived because his father returned in time. He intended to take revenge, but Lord Lin was rescued by an old Taoist at the Foundation Establishment realm." Buzhai was not foolish. He had long been involved in northern affairs and maintained contact with the capital Immortal Dao. Though he did not know the truth, he had already vaguely guessed that Lin Feng's identity was extraordinary. When he addressed him as Lord Lin, Li Jianqian paused slightly. Not only did he fail to correct him, he also did not ask about the identity of that Foundation Establishment realm cultivator. Instead, he asked solemnly, "Did you follow my instructions?" Buzhai nodded. "This subordinate followed your orders precisely. All the information was gathered from casual talk in taverns. Strangely enough, perhaps the matter itself is intriguing, but it spreads with astonishing speed, as though everyone is delighted in mentioning it." Li Jianqian nodded silently, and Buzhai continued, "The information on the other side has also been conveyed to Lord Gong. He was most grateful and instructed me further. He said they have obtained intelligence that the Black Rat Dharma Protector has already investigated the origin of the mineral vein and has come to suspect Lord Lin. He personally went to Beikou Prefecture, presumably to meet Wang Bakong." Li Jianqian gestured for him to withdraw, then turned to Li Minggong and said softly, "Affairs on the northern shore have always been handled by Chen Yang. It is said that Fei Qingya's cultivation speed is astonishing. When she first arrived, she was only at the 5th stage. Now she has already broken through to the 6th stage of the embryonic breathing realm, surpassing most of our family's direct descendants." Taoist Master Tingling gave no instruction on what kind of spiritual qi to bestow upon her. Taoist Master Qiuhu has also sent no message. For now, we can only let her consolidate her cultivation. This matter will likely require us to decide for ourselves. Li Minggong pondered for a moment and asked, "What is your idea?" Li Jianqian smiled faintly and said, "River Pure Qi." Li family's River Mountain Sutra had yet to be unsealed. How could they possibly miss such an excellent opportunity? Once Fei Qingya consumed River Pure Qi, her future cultivation would inevitably require subsequent techniques. As long as she emerged from seclusion within 3 years, and the matter was mentioned in passing, Lin Feng would very likely resolve the issue for her sake. Many matters that the Purple Mansion realm could not accomplish might not be impossible for a true monarch. Li Minggong's eyes lit up as she nodded repeatedly. Li Jianqian leaned back and smiled. Dharma Protector Chen is extremely attentive toward her, fearing she might lack suitable techniques to cultivate. He not only sent her a portion of River Pure Qi, but also found her a rather good complementary cultivation method. He said that since their techniques are similar, it would be easier to give her guidance. Li Minggong looked at him and shook her head with a helpless smile as she replied, "Who can blame him, when our Dharma Protector Chen is such a warm-hearted fellow?" Li Jianqian smiled. However, Dharma Protector Chen has also sighed repeatedly that the family's inherited techniques are sealed by secret arts, with the method O.F. opening them lost. No one knows what kind of genius could possibly unlock them. It is truly regrettable. With the matter settled between them, Li Jianqian set pen to paper and said, "As it happens, Dharma Protector Chen's family produced some fine children. They have already come of age, possess quite high innate ability, and have reached the qi cultivation realm. They came to the family to report qi ingestion. One is his second son, Chen Jingxi, and another is his nephew, Chen Jinbao. Both are quite good. According to the elders, they are no worse than the Xuanxin brothers." This was the first such assessment Li Minggong had heard. She looked up with mild surprise and nodded as she said, "The Chen family has always been low-key. I knew there were a few such people, but I did not realize they could be compared to the 2 brothers of their family. Truly fine innate ability." Li Jianqian nodded silently, rubbing the jade cup in his hand as he replied, "Zhongliang has also reached the qi cultivation realm, so it is just right to assign him a subordinate. The members of the Chen family are all renowned as capable ministers and effective hands. It is rare to find any useless ones, so it is quite suitable." Li Minggong smiled and nodded, a trace of relief rising in her heart. Fortunately, Zhao Wei produced many descendants. Without him, relying only on Xinghin, Zhufeng, and at most Jiangzhang and Zhaoda, it would likely be impossible to keep so many geniuses in check. Li Jianqian was pondering something, and merely said casually, "That Fei Qingyi is still fairly obedient. He no longer dares return to the northern shore and focuses every day on handling affairs within the region, as if trying to make amends for his mistakes. Aside from being a bit clumsy in his actions, his attitude is quite positive. Li Minggong let out a sigh and replied, "How could he not be proactive? Everyone in the Fei family is watching anxiously, afraid that you might be dissatisfied." Li Jiangqian let out a snort of laughter. "This matter does not lie with me. The Fei family has its share of fortune. Fei Qingyi, Fei Qingyi, and Fei Qingya. Regardless of whether they turn out well or poorly, at the very least they have managed to keep this line of fortune alive." Chapter 1326, Upheaval I. After Li Jiangqian finished speaking, the woman beside him nodded and said softly, "You may consider it at your discretion. When we returned from the old elder, he also asked about it, having thought it over as well. The present moment is not an appropriate time." Since Li Minggong had spoken this way, Li Jiangqian naturally nodded. He committed the matter to memory, placed 2 letters on the desk, and said softly, "There is one more matter. There is news regarding Taoist Shouting." When Taoist Shouting had left the Li family, he had originally intended to go to the Chen family, but Li Jiangqian had forcibly stopped him. Instead, he had sent letters to the Chen family and Jingyi Mountain. Both replies had now been delivered. One letter is from the Chen family of Yuyang Prefecture. It contained mostly words of gratitude for our family's warning. The messenger contacted Shouting and said that turmoil has also arisen within the Chen family. If he were to come, he could first go to a stronghold in the southern border. Li Jiangqian shook his head somewhat helplessly and replied, although Taoist Shouting was full of doubts, he could also see the intention to decline, so he did not go. The other letter was from Jingyi Mountain, arranging for him to travel through the southern border, so he could only head south in frustration. Li Minggong exhaled lightly, but then saw Li Jiangqian say with some surprise, "Jingyi Mountain was rather strange. The letter was polite toward our family, yet it scolded Shouting outright. It seems this lineage is one with a rather strong temperament." He joked as he escorted Li Minggong out, his thoughts still lingering on the earlier discussion. The Fei family held a certain degree of autonomy on the northern shore, and the Li family had not acted against them for many years. In truth, there had been many voices within the family around the matter. Regardless of the opinions voiced in the hall, the 2 great surnames, the Chen family and the Ren family, firmly maintained their positions, fully supporting the reduction of Fei autonomy and even annexation. Chen Yang is very clever. There is in fact no room for the Chen family to make a second choice on such a sensitive issue. As for the Ren family, the Ren family's old master Njayan was still alive. He had once paid his respects to Li Tongya, and his status rivaled that of Chen Dong of the Chen family. However, the true leader was his son, Siwei. Master Ren was once one of the few foundation establishment, Dharma protectors of the Li clan, and was highly valued for a time. But once the Li family advanced to become a purple Ma Enxian realm family, his shallow immortal foundation was no longer of much use. Later, he was captured by enemies. After his return, the younger generation all replaced him, and he remained low-key. Yet he has spoken up several times on this matter, to the point that the Fei family had begun to lose face. As for the various branches, most remained silent. Counting from the Zhuang generation, there are 4 in total. Zhufeng and Zhaoyang were busy seeking benefits for their juniors and had no mind to care about such matters, essentially following whatever the family decides. Xinghen and Zhuming were even less involved, and their voices were correspondingly faint. Li Chengqi, the sole remaining member of the Chengaming generation, had a stern and eccentric temperament and was usually hard to read. Although Li Minggong and Li Xuangshuan had never taken a definitive stance, they had implied likewise that it was not appropriate to act against the Fei family. Fei Qingya, as long as arrangements for Fei Qingya have not been made, all plans concerning the Fei family are empty talk. She has only cultivated river pure qi. It will not be easy to explain things to Fei Qingyi, so we will need to find a reason to send him away. Strange indeed that none of the Purple Mansion realm cultivators have made arrangements for her. Li Jiangqian was deep in thought when he suddenly heard the door softly sound. Footsteps followed, and 2 people hurried to the hall. One was large in build, honest and simple, and immediately kowtowed in greeting. The other did not even bother to bow and strode straight inside. Though imposing in presence, his expression was unpleasant and his face ashen. "Greetings to the family head." Li Jiangqian's heart stirred slightly. Of the 2 before him, one was Li Wen, who oversaw the Jade Court and was a veteran minister of several generations. The other was Li Chengqi, who held authority over Qingdu and was in the qi cultivation realm, the sole remaining seedling of the Chengaming generation. He immediately stepped down from the platform and asked, "What happened?" Li Chengqi's face was drawn and pale as he spoke in a low voice. "Family head, your second uncle's life jade has shattered." Second uncle. Nearly all of Li Chengqi's descendants had been lost to family affairs. His daughter Li Xingxai had also died at the hands of a devil cultivator. He had only raised his two nephews as sons, namely the brothers Li Zhufeng and Li Zhaoyang of the Zhuang generation. These two brothers were powerful figures within the family who cared the most about the younger generation, holding considerable prestige. They were always concerned with securing protection and conferment for relatives and juniors, which displeased those managing the household. Li Jianqian thus transferred them to watch over the eastern shore and brought Li Chengqi back to manage Qingdu, never expecting such an incident to occur. How could this happen? Although his elder's innate ability was not top tier, he was still a mainstay of the direct lineage and a prominent core member of the major sect of the Zhuang generation. Li Jianqian was shaken, anger flashing in his eyes as he immediately asked, "Then what about eldest uncle? The two elders were together on the eastern shore. Has any news come back?" Li Chengqi shook his head grimly. Pain filled his rigid features as he gritted his teeth and said, "There is no news. Fortunately, the life jade remains intact and unharmed." Li Jianqian secretly let out a breath of relief. Although eldest uncle Li Zhufeng and second uncle Li Zhaoyang had always advanced and retreated together, with similar status and cultivation, it was clear that their positions in Li Jianqian's heart were entirely different. For one thing, eldest uncle Li Zhufeng was none other than the father of Li Kuai, who cultivated in Purple Smoke Gate, and the family's rising star, Li Jiangzhang. Li Zhaoyang was merely their uncle. Though this was cruel, a trace of relief did flash through Li Jianqian's heart. What remained was confusion and anger. He looked toward Li Wen kneeling before the hall when another set of footsteps sounded. Chen Yang, clad in black armor, approached from the side, knelt on one knee, and presented a letter with both hands. Li Minggong and Li Xuanxuan entered as well. Li Minggong's expression was merely grim, while Li Xuanxuan showed both pain and anger. Neither disturbed him, standing silently to the side. Li Jianqian gave a slight return salute, accepted the letter with a stern expression, read it once, then passed it to Li Xuanxuan. After the elder read it, he heard Li Jianqian utter coldly, "Today our family engaged in a clash of spell arts with the capital Immortal Dao upstream in the wilderness. A group of Foundation Establishment Realm devil cultivators secretly entered the wilderness, raided the eastern shore, breached two grand formations, and killed many people. Although Dharma Protector Kui arrived in time, it was already too late." Li Jianqian had already understood matters from the letter. With the Li family and the capital Immortal Dao clashing on the river, the distance and timing were predictable. An infiltration like this would be easily detected and contained, meaning they had been schemed against by others. Recently, the eldest and second uncles were on the eastern shore and should have been together with Dharma Protector N. However, their assigned duties differed. Today was originally the eldest uncle's responsibility, but he had the second uncle go in his stead. It was precisely this swap that saved a life. Burning with anger, Li Chengqi finished reading and handed the letter to Li Wen beside him. He prostrated himself on the ground and said sharply, "The wilderness is filled with our family's informants. This group of Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators appeared and vanished like ghosts, yet managed to infiltrate the eastern shore. They must have been aided by concealment Dharma artifacts and are by no means ordinary. Someone deliberately sought to harm us. I beg the family head to investigate clearly." Li Jianqian naturally understood this. Those who harmed his family would never be mere devil cultivators or rogue cultivators. His expression grew heavy as other doubts arose in his heart. Li Wen then bowed and said, "Our family occupies the western part of the wilderness and was attacked at its core. That means these people came from the eastern downstream. The downstream banks belong to the capital Immortal Dao, Grace Covenant Gate, and Xuanmiao Temple." Li Jianqian shook his head and replied, "As long as one possesses a fine concealment Dharma artifact, passing through the territories of these forces would not be difficult. We will wait for Dharma Protector Kui to arrive and ask." Li Chengqi could only restrain his anger. Thankfully, the eastern shore was very close. Not long after the life jade in Qingdu shattered, a burst of commotion arose. Kui Juyan descended onto the island and came up with an uneasy expression. Li Zhufeng arrived with him. This eldest uncle, who had always thought first of his descendants, no longer showed any trace of his usual simplicity. His face alternated between pale and green as he dropped to his knees with a thud. He trembled as he spoke, family head must avenge him. My younger brother worked diligently his entire life, yet was harmed by enemies. Not even his remains were left behind. He did not even have many children under his knee." He cried in utter devastation, and even Li Jianqian found the situation difficult to handle. This was no longer a moment to care about etiquette. After calming Li Chengqi and Li Zhufeng, he summoned Kui Juyan forward and asked with cold anger, "Dharma Protector Kui, when you encountered the devil cultivators, how were they dressed, and did they reveal any traces of their movements?" Kui Juyan hesitated somewhat. He glanced at Li Jianqian, then turned to look at Li Chengqi. This middle-aged man had lost a nephew he had watched grow up since childhood. The weight of his grief was not something others could easily understand. Seeing Qi Juyan hesitate, he could hardly restrain himself. Seeing Li Chengqi's agitated demeanor, Qi Juyan finally said with an uneasy expression, "The exact number is unknown, but they were all at the Foundation establishment realm and each held Dharma artifacts. These seemed especially helpful in breaking formations. The two grand formations were not sophisticated and were like paper, breaking as soon as they were touched. Two of them exchanged spell arts with me. Whether it was Master and or Maya Shui, many cultivators present saw it. One used converging water, though his immortal foundation was unclear. The other was very obvious. He cultivated South Chu waters and even took out rather high-quality talismans to escape. He was certainly no ordinary individual. Later, I pursued them all the way to Grace Covenant Gates territory, only to find that they were also fighting a group of devil cultivators there, and the battle was extremely fierce. I had no choice but to withdraw." As soon as these words were spoken, Li Jianqian frowned, understanding why Qi Juyan had hesitated to speak earlier. South Chu waters. Only one Purple Mansion realm cultivator was renowned throughout the world for cultivating South Chu waters. It was the capital Immortal Dao across the river, the very faction confronting the Li family. How could this be possible? Li Jianqian was stunned inwardly, but Li Chengqi suddenly realized the truth. He dropped to his knees with a thud and cried out in grief, "So it truly is the capital Immortal Dao. They pinned our main forces down on the river, then secretly sent cultivators to infiltrate the eastern shore and launch a surprise attack on us. As expected, this capital Immortal Dao has long been plotting against our family." Li Jianqian helped him up and advised him, "There are many practitioners of South Chu waters in Jiangnan. The Lingu family also cultivates South Chu waters. It is not yet possible to reach a conclusion with only one immortal foundation. Great uncle, please take care of your health." Li Chengqi refused to rise, while Li Zhufeng was already in tears, gritting his teeth as he said, "There may be many who cultivate South Chu waters, but we have only one enemy fighting our family." Chapter 1327, Upheaval II. Li Chengqi then turned to look at Qi Juyan and said through tears, "May I ask, Dharma Protector Qi, since you exchanged techniques with the enemy, whether their immortal foundation was refined and whether their spell arts were profound? There must be a difference in level. If they were from some miscellaneous lineage, they would never have been a match for you. To be able to escape from your hands without leaving any trace, it must be that South Chu waters lineage across the river." Li Chengqi's hatred was immense. His daughter Li Xingxai's death years ago had also been connected to the capital Immortal Dao, and now Li Zhaoyang had been added to the list. How could this not make him gnash his teeth in fury? Though he was usually stern and eccentric, his mind was no slower than others. He immediately grasped the crux of the matter, asking exactly what Li Jianqian and Li Xuanxuan both wished to know. Qi Juyan sighed. This person's cultivation technique was very refined and must belong to a well-known lineage. His spell arts were no weaker than those of the Qi family. Unfortunately, his cultivation was insufficient, and he only managed to escape by relying on those few powerful talismans. Now it was as if the words capital Immortal Dao were practically written across this person's face. Li Jianqian sighed inwardly. Not everyone knew about the matters in Jiangbei. From Li Chengqi's perspective, this incident could only have been carried out by the capital Immortal Dao. However, Qi Juyan and the others knew that the two sides had a tacit understanding in private. Li Jianqian was hard-pressed to believe that Guan Gongxiao would suddenly go mad and scheme against them at such a moment. Guan Gongxiao knows when to bend and when to stand firm, but he is certainly not the sort to lose sight of the bigger picture, nor would he do something like this for petty, immediate gain. He glanced at Qi Juyan. Dharma Protector Qi was clearly at a loss, unsure how to speak of the matter. Li Jianqian pondered briefly, then heard Li Xuanxuan let out a long breath. Leaning on his cane and tapping it against the ground, the old elder straightened and said in a hoarse voice, "Ninth, our family and the capital Immortal Dao are locked in a standoff in the north, but it is only a standoff. Both sides fear consequences too much to dare truly make a move. Yet now such an incident has suddenly occurred, with South Chu waters displayed without the slightest concealment. How do we know it is not some other family, coveting the situation, secretly fanning the flames? They may be hoping our family and the opposite shore will fight to the death so they may reap the fisherman's gain. That would only bring pain to our kin and joy to our enemies. South Chu waters is indeed a profound technique and a symbol of the capital Immortal Dao and the Lingu family, but that does not mean others cannot obtain it. If the opposite shore truly had such capability, why would they not strike from behind during the great battle on the river, instead of twisting around to kill a mere Qi cultivation realm cultivator? Was it solely to disgust our family? These two remarks had a strong effect. Li Chengqi's expression changed as doubt flashed across his face, but the anger in his eyes had yet to fade. Prostrating himself on the ground, he said respectfully, "The elder is right. This junior was rash." However, with so many eyes watching the eastern shore, not responding after such an event occurring in full view of all would be extremely bad. Li Chengqi was correct. The Li family's Purple Mansion realm presence was already on thin ground. If they suddenly suffered such a loss, with a powerful direct lineage elder killed, and the entire family showed no reaction, their prestige would surely be damaged. However, Li Jiangqian merely frowned and looked at Li Zhufeng, asking softly, "Eldest uncle, may I ask what delayed you for an hour?" Li Zhufeng wiped away his tears. He no longer cared about appearances as he replied, "It was originally a disgraceful matter, but at this point it must be said. I brought a concubine to the eastern shore and discovered signs of her infidelity. In my rage, I spent an hour dragging out the adulterer. Because of this. I understand." Only then did Li Jiangqian withdraw his gas. Ian changed the subject. Did the elder leave behind any relics, and how should the ancestral rites be arranged? Please have King Du handle these matters first. I will send people to inquire. There may be an answer. Great uncle, please be at ease. This matter will not be let go so easily, but to vent our anger, we must first find the true culprit. As for the eastern shore, I will have Chen Yang make a trip to search for traces. Li Zhufeng immediately kowtowed in thanks, tears streaming endlessly down his face. Li Chengqi, however, was not so easily appeased. Having heard no definite time frame, he said nothing, merely raising his head. After receiving a glance from Li Minggong, he could only kowtow twice more and lead Li Zhufeng away. Li Jiangqian ordered the hall doors closed. His expression darkened at once as he growled, "Which family has such audacity? At a time like this, to still dare stir up such trouble in the wilderness? Do they truly hate our family to the point of gnashing their teeth?" Li Minggong's expression likewise turned cold as she replied, "I think the eastern shore is also problematic. Zhou happened to run into them, which shows that his whereabouts were exposed as well." It was unavoidable. Li Xuanxuan shook his head and replied, "Our own Foundation establishment realm cultivators were stationed by the river, so there was naturally no need to hide their whereabouts. Who could have imagined a group of Foundation establishment realm cultivators were concealing themselves and would suddenly appear in the mountains? At present, the best course is still to search the eastern shore and communicate with the capital Immortal Dao." Li Jiangqian pondered for a few breaths, then asked, "Why must we do that? I believe the elder's earlier words were more accurate. Which family is hoping our family and the capital Immortal Dao will fight more fiercely, or rather, is unwilling to see our family and the capital Immortal Dao ease tensions in secret?" Li Minggong sighed and said, "Following this line of thought, whether it is Grace Covenant Gate, Xuanmiao Temple, or even Chengyan Gate, all are possible." Li Jiangqian remained silent, unease rising in his heart. Where are Taoist Master Tinglin and Taoist Master Qiuhu? It would be one thing if there were no arrangements for the qi cultivated by Fei Qingya, but now that such a group has stirred up trouble in the wilderness, there is still no reaction at all. As far as he knew, Ning Wan was at Lake Xian, so it was understandable that she could not spare a hand, yet even Tinglin had vanished. The matters in Jiangbei had likely shifted, causing this Purple Mansion realm cultivator to move even farther north. Li Jiangqian let out a heavy sigh and continued, "Furthermore, I fear there was a divine ability involved in this matter. Eldest uncle surviving by sheer coincidence. Could it be that the instigator did not wish to involve Purple Smoke Gate? If that is the case, then this becomes far too troublesome." "Likely." Li Xuanxun stroked his beard and shook his head, sighing repeatedly as he replied, "You are not aware of this matter, but I am. It was not something of 1 or 2 days. It was deliberate and meant to catch someone in the act. That is why he secretly had his brother go in his place all along while he hid in the dark to observe. A Purple Mansion realm cultivator has no need to lay out such a prolonged scheme. Moreover, the influence began from the lake. There is no such logic to it. In my view, it was truly fortune." Li Jiangqian's expression instead eased considerably, and he nodded, saying, "Then I have some confidence. Putting everything together, it does not seem like Chengyan Gate or Xuanmiao Temple. They do not have such intentions at present. If one truly considers it, these two families may well see that our family and the capital Immortal Dao are putting on an act. In that case, such a move would be nothing but courting trouble and needlessly smearing oneself. As for Grace Covenant Gate, Taoist Master Zhugong and Taoist Master Tinglin are close friends. Although she governs with leniency, she would not be lenient to this extent. The devil cultivators under her command would never possess such loyalty as to fan these flames." He turned and drew out a sheet of letter paper, speaking solemnly, "In this matter, I think we should make inquiries toward the Eastern Sea." Before Li Jiangqian could elaborate, another burst of noisy footsteps rang out. He had no choice but to open the hall doors and let them in. The old man Buzai hurried to the front, his face filled with shock and confusion, and reporting to the family head and to all the lords. Locust Soul Hall has crossed the Brahma Cloud territory and begun fighting with the Golden Tang Gate. Li Jianqian was not surprised at all. He stepped down from the platform and confirmed, Golden Tang Gate. Precisely. Li Jianqian's brows rose as he asked, when did this news arrive? It is said to have been last night. Li Minggong held a very poor impression of Golden Tang Gate. She should have been pleased with this news, yet with the loss of a direct lineage member in his own family, she found little interest and merely shook her head as she said, they deserve it. Back then, Golden Tang Gate was extremely arrogant in Jiangbei, and now this day has come. Their entire immortal gate only has a handful of people left. They likely cannot contend with a ramshackle Locust Soul Hall. What pretext did they use? Buzai hurriedly replied, to unify the White River Stream region. It is said that the Golden Feather sect sent representatives not long after Locust Soul Hall was established, acknowledged its rule in Jiangbei, and even stated that the Three Rivers region belonged to Locust Soul Hall. Yet the Golden Tang Gate also holds territory in White River Stream. Taoist Bai used this matter to provoke them. Originally, those lands were nothing significant. After all, the Golden Tang Gate has sealed its mountain now, with only a few minor peaks under it. Giving them up would have been fine. But beyond handing over those territories, Locust Soul Hall also demanded the nearby spirit ore mines. The Sidhu family has no other livelihood now and survives solely on those, so naturally they refused. Li Jianqian let out a breath of relief and shook his head inwardly. I thought there would not be enough time. I did not expect to underestimate Taoist Bai's greed. Now he can be said to have fate upon him. No Purple Mansion Realm cultivator would need to use divine abilities to lure him. It is purely his own boundless avarice. What did the Golden Feather sect say on their end? Buzai hurriedly replied, ever since Taoist Master Tianyuo personally appeared, seized the Golden Tang Gate's treasures, and showed disdain toward the people of the Golden Tang Gate, rumors in Jiangbei have faded. The cultivators of the Golden Tang Gate have been consumed by shame and resentment, and no longer dare speak of the Golden Feather sect as friendly. Taoist Bai likely saw this, and thus boldly advanced westward. Only then did Li Jianqian nod again. So many things had happened in the span of a single day. He rubbed his temples and suddenly asked, Golden Tang Gate still has a Sidhu Ku. He is in our family's dungeon. Sidhu Ku had been imprisoned by the Li family for many years, mainly under sealed cultivation and soft confinement. In addition, the Ding family had once been in the floating south region, and Ding Weizeng had ties with Sidhu Ku. Thus, relying on this connection, the old man's days were fairly comfortable. The Golden Tang Gate has already been abandoned by the Golden Feather sect. After all, it did their dirty work for so many years that both Jiangnan and Jiangbei know that the Golden Tang name is foul and bloody. Once it clashes with Locust Soul Hall, there will be no good ending. But such a clash buys time for a true monarch to grow. Once those few mineral veins are lost as well, the Sidhu family will retreat to the mountains, and the flourishing Locust Soul Hall will truly take center stage. As for the Sidhu family riding the momentum of a true monarch, that possibility was slim. Whether in Jiangbei or Jiangnan, the number of Dao lineages the Sidhu family had offended could not be counted on one hand, and the Purple Mansion realm powers they had angered were even more numerous. Their reputation was foul, and everyone merely watched in silence. At this moment when Li Jianqian thought of Sidhu Ku, he likewise had no good intentions. The old man was weak, greedy, and extremely easy to control. The key point was that, placed within the current Golden Tang Gate, his standing was high enough. Mount Tangdao has a grand formation, and Locust Soul Hall is unlikely to breach it. In the end, it will most likely result in sealed isolation. Once this matter is over, Sidhu Ku will count as an important figure. He will ultimately be a useful chess piece. Chapter 1328, The Fruit of Vengeance, I. The autumn air of Moongaze Lake had yet to fade. Crimson and gold interwove across the mountains in a bright and pristine sky. It was the moment when the evening glow burned most vividly, dyeing the heavens a blazing red and leaving layers of vermilion clouds hanging along the horizon. The clouds rolled and surged as a single point of azure gold pierced through them, drawing in the alternating radiance of the sun, moon, and the mingled brilliance of heaven and earth, before descending through the mountain forests and settling upon a great island within the lake. The dust-sealed cave dwelling slowly shifted, shaking loose layers of accumulated ash. A wisp of red light slipped out from within, drifting and fading, then gathering and transforming before the grand formation into a woman clad in a long gown of cloud silk. At her waist hung a talisman engraved with a purple-black mountain ghost, stirring faint currents of wind with each gentle step she took. She stepped forward and extended her hand, catching the point of azure gold from the sky. With a light twist of her fingers, the color vanished, scattering into specks of silvery light. This is just the right chance to complete scattered white falling feathers. She rode the wind and headed toward the hall. After traveling for a short while, she saw an old man bowing before the hall, thin as a withered branch and with a full head of white hair. She smiled faintly and asked, "Guest cultivator, what brings you here?" Bajai had been standing there blankly, pondering how to report the matter. Startled, he looked up in shock and uncertainty. When he suddenly saw her, he froze for a moment before hurriedly saying, "Eldest miss, you have emerged from seclusion." Li Qiuan was the woman of greatest innate ability of her Jiang generation, and she had personally been brought back to the island by Li Qingheng. Her status was exceedingly exalted, at least in Bajai's eyes. The old man hurriedly bowed and sighed. This time the family head will finally have support. It is still the matter of Jiangbei. He had only just spoken when a series of footsteps sounded from within the hall. A young man in crimson robes strode down from the platform. When he reached the doorway, his eyes lit up, his expression a mixture of joy and concern, as he said with a smile, "You have come out of seclusion, little sister. Why are there no phenomena?" Li Qiuan cupped her hands and replied softly, "It was a transformation of inherent nature. A single stretch of evening glow is sufficient. This is not a Dao lineage meant to be displayed openly before the world. Let us speak inside." Li Jiangqian raised his hand first, closing the hall doors, then led her inside. Leaning out slightly, he turned back to ask Bajai quietly, "What is it?" Bajai hastily replied, "The Golden Tang Gate has been defeated. The members of the Sidhu family are all gravely injured. Gate Master Sidhu Bio had his eyes removed and his internal organs taken out and was made into Taoist Bai's Dharma artifact. The Golden Tang Gate has retreated deep into the mountains. Locust Soul Hall has withdrawn its forces and returned home. The Black Rat Dharma Protector has also returned to Beikou Prefecture. Trouble is bound to follow." "I understand." Li Jiangqian dismissed him. Only then did a smile appear on his face as he entered the hall and asked, "Congratulations, little sister. What kind of wondrous attainment is it?" Li Qiuan cultivated the Golden Book of Singular Attunement. The immortal foundation she refined was called Divine Singular Attunement. This whole pill method had left behind very few legacies. The name itself was something few had even heard of, let alone dared to speak of openly or inquire into. Thus Li Qiuan replied, "Divine Singular Attunement takes the path of nurturing through the whole pill. It gathers immortal radiance, refines golden mercury, evades death, prolongs life, commands birds and beasts, and seeks the art of immortality through secret techniques, tempering the essences of heaven and earth in pursuit of longevity." She seemed somewhat hesitant and shook her head as she said, "At its core, this is a Tao lineage of reclusive cultivation, seeking the enduring preservation of essence and life." Li Jiangqian nodded as he said, "The whole pill Tao is something I have only heard of in the form of secret white mercury. It is not weak in combat. Divine Singular Attunement, on the other hand, leans more toward escape and the refinement of mercury medicines. That is quite suitable." He smiled faintly and continued, "With elder brothers and uncles at home, they can look after you no matter what. Having this kind of path benefits the family far more than people like us. Unlike my immortal foundation, which only offers subtle assistance and normally requires me to take wood materials and spirit herbs to increase my cultivation, it cannot be used for the family." "Elder brother, that is not quite right." Li Qiuan smiled in reply. "Combat cannot be avoided. As the saying goes, one cultivates techniques to protect the Tao. Taoist Master Zhejiang was famed for his pill methods when he established his foundation, yet his cultivation was likewise first-rate, the foremost among the four Zais. I have never heard of him losing a fight. Even Taoist Master Yehui, who possessed 3 divine abilities, could not injure him. In the end, a grand Taoist master had to take action to force him to leave for the outer sea. If he had only known how to refine pills, he could not have reached where he stands today." Li Jiangqian hesitated, then nodded. Li Qiuan continued, "The Divine Singular Attunement Tao naturally enhances transformations of inherent properties. It is likely stronger than secret. White mercury, it can regulate the qi of yin and yang, aiding many transformations among the 5 virtues, mainly in water, fire, and metal. The second point lies in transformation. This Tao allows changes of form and appearance, the disguising of Dharma artifacts and formations, and even the concealment of one's Tao lineage. If one breaks through to divine abilities, its transformative potential becomes even greater and is no longer confined to the human body." Li Jiangqian nodded silently, deep in thought. Li Qiuan continued with a hint of concern. "The whole pill Tao fears only 3 things. The first is converging water. Once this water descends, it can scatter mercury and turn it into sand. The second is merging fire. This fire is even more vicious, burning mercury and melting lead, destroying spiritual nature. The last is origin thunder, which is what is now called prime magnetism. Li Jianqian sounded somewhat regretful as he replied, "It is a pity. Converging water is currently at its height and not easy to avoid. Merging fire is also far from an obscure Dao lineage. As for Origin Thunder, it has vanished for a long time. I have heard it exists only in Wu State, so there is no need to worry too much." Li Qian nodded as well and said, "Moreover, there is also scattered white falling feathers. It is an unheard of escape technique. In the past, I could never grasp it, but now, with the condensation of divine singular attunement and the subtle resonance between the celestial phenomenon and the principles of transformation, I have finally completed the escape spell." The cultivation of the whole pill Dao had always been peculiar. He had not expected the breakthrough phenomenon itself to aid cultivation. Li Jianqian offered a word of congratulations and asked, "May I see it? I have never heard of a whole pill escape spell either." "That would not be appropriate." Li Qian shook her head and explained, "This escape method is similar to the blood escape used by ordinary cultivators. Escaping with it greatly harms one's vital essence and cultivation, so it should not be demonstrated casually." Li Jianqian nodded in understanding. At that moment, Li Xuanxuan pushed open the door and came in from the side. He was dressed in dark blue garments, his aged face smiling, as he held a small box tucked in his arms. Wannert. Among Li Xuanxuan's many descendants, aside from Li Ziming, few had truly amounted to much. If Li Zhuming was the jewel in his palm, then Li Qian was the flesh of his heart. Now that she was before him, the two juniors bowed together. The old man set the box on the table, lifted them both up with one hand each, and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Qian, take a look at this." Only then did Li Qian take the box, which was about the size of a pillow. Inside lay a layer of golden cotton as padding, cradling a single silver-gray droplet of mercury no larger than a fingernail. Li Qian was immediately transfixed as she listened to the old man speak. To the north in the river loop lies Taifo State, territory of the devil cultivator Helian family. During the North and South conflict, one of their people emerged, named Helian Chengguang. He was shot dead by Xuan Feng at the Great Ning Palace and carried this treasure on him. It was unclear whether this mercury droplet was a spirit item or a Dharma artifact. This is something aligned with the whole pill Dao. We could not identify it, and since the Helian family also possessed Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, it was never taken out and was kept until today. Later, when Ziming broke through to the Purple Mansion Realm, I remembered this item and brought it to him. He said it was a Dharma artifact, not a spirit item, and that it could not be opened without whole pill spell arts. Li Qian first drew up a sliver of silver light and let it fall upon the mercury droplet. After a brief calculation, she picked it up, considered it for a moment, and said with delight, "It is undoubtedly a whole pill Dharma artifact. Its age is ancient. Calling it a Dharma artifact is fitting, yet calling it a legacy is even more so. It truly carries an archaic air." She closed the mercury droplet within her palm and poured her mana into it. A burst of silver light flashed forth, and it was drawn into her sea of qi. "The refinement is actually this fast." Li Qian closed her eyes and sensed it for a breath before speaking softly. "This Dharma artifact is an inner cultivation treasure stored within the Danshan. It can assist in casting spells, clarify spiritual sense, and invigorate the spirit. When necessary, it can also serve as a medium for whole pill transformations. It also contains an internal incantation called the translucent blood-silver technique. It is an ancient devil technique that feeds on blood qi and uses light and mercury arts to form a pill." The status of this technique was clearly awkward. Li Qian sighed and said, "In terms of preserving life alone, this technique is only slightly inferior to my scattered white falling feathers. Unfortunately, it is a devil technique. Although several of its spell arts can be used, the Dao lineage as a whole is of no benefit to our family. As for the Dharma artifact itself, it can be taken out to face enemies or used to save one's life. For our family, the artifact itself is actually the more valuable part." Li Xuanxuan merely sighed and said, "As long as it is useful, that is enough. Although the Helian family has declined and is surrounded by powerful enemies, they still have Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. It is best not to let them recognize it." Li Qian nodded slightly. This item resided in the Danshan rather than hanging at the waist, so it was not easy to identify. Moreover, it was still unclear whether it belonged to the Helian family or had been obtained personally by Helian Chengguang. She decided to keep it for now and asked about the matters in Jiangbei. Li Jianqian gave her a brief account and frowned as he finished. As for the matter of second uncle being killed, the capital Immortal Dao has already sent Gongsun Beifan to clarify it. Guan Gongxiao has been extremely anxious about this matter and wrote several letters to explain. It does not seem to have been done by the capital Immortal Dao. My earlier thought was that your seclusion was the best course, so you would not be dragged into this matter. Now that you have emerged, and since I have confirmed that the talisman seeds are indeed effective, I decided to tell you." His expression darkened as he continued. "Several months ago, second uncle was killed, yet Taoist Master Tinglin has not shown herself for a long time. I suspect that matters in Jiangbei are gradually going awry. You are skilled in shamanic arts, so I ask you to examine it as well." Li Qian spent her days in seclusion and was unfamiliar with this second uncle. She merely sighed softly before immediately raising her head to ask, "Were any remains left behind?" Li Jianqian shook his head heavily. Li Qian now found the situation difficult and asked, "Does he have any descendants? We can try using blood essence. This method is not very accurate and may lead to misjudgment." Li Xuangshuan immediately stroked his beard and said, "I will go fetch it." The old man exited to the side. Only then did Li Jianqian lower his voice and say, "Wanner, act within your limits and do not injure yourself." Li Jianqian was clearly afraid that this matter involved the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators and might affect Li Qian. Li Xuangshuan valued familial bonds, so Li Jianqian did not say such words in front of him. Yet in the eyes of this Li family head, Li Qian as a Purple Mansion Realm seed was what mattered most. As for others, whether mortals or cultivators, their deaths were merely a matter of greater or lesser loss. Thus Li Qian replied gently, "It is fine. My shamanic arts are profound, and I carry talisman seeds with me. Unless I am calculating a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator directly, it is nothing of concern." Chapter 1329, The Fruit of Vengeance, II. The two waited for a while until Li Xuangshuan returned with a small vial of blood essence. Li Qian took out 3 ivory command tokens from her sleeve and set them each in a position. She placed the blood essence among them, contemplated for 3 breaths, then drew out 1 command token, repeating the process 9 times. She straightened herself. The radiance of mana around her body gradually dimmed, her face turning slightly pale as she spoke with solemn gravity. 1 verdict, 9 confirmations. Vengeance, burned by the eastern fire, leaving no remains. Jianqian let out a cold laugh, while Li Qian spoke more tactfully. Second uncle, or his direct lineage, was burned by an eastern fire virtue Dao lineage. 9 out of 9 results indicate that the matter is widely known. 9 identical outcomes indicate that no Purple Mansion Realm divine abilities were involved. This was a calamity of vengeance, a life and death blood feud. This all but openly pointed the origin toward Crimson Reef Island. Li Jianqian pressed one hand against the main seat, his thoughts gradually clarifying. He stroked it twice and said softly, "Widely known. What a fine widely known. It must have been Guo Hongjian. Crimson Reef Island made the move and it was widely known. When passing Lake Xian and Grace Covenant Gate, they were likely deliberately let through." Li Jianqian was perfectly clear on this and sneered. "My family and Crimson Reef Island share a life and death feud. If I were Guan Gongxiao, no matter how close I was with Crimson Reef, I would never reveal the tacit understanding between the two families. Any news he spread in the Eastern Sea would certainly be that our two families were already engaged in battle. So that bastard could not wait And why longer? After inquiring inland and learning that the two families were merely confronting each other on the river with no major casualties, he grew anxious. He secretly murdered one of my family in hopes of forcing the two sides into a full-scale clash so that the Guan family would completely turn to Crimson Reef. He certainly planned it well. Li Qian put away the 3 command tokens and said seriously, "If the ancestors of second uncle's lineage were never killed by merging fire, then this result points directly to second uncle himself. It was undoubtedly Crimson Reef Island." Li Jianqian said quietly, "As for your conclusion that no Purple Mansion Realm divine abilities were involved, that is indeed correct. This area is extremely sensitive. It is possible that several Purple Mansion Realm cultivators even tacitly allowed this to happen. They could not have failed to see the understanding between our two families. Either they felt it would be better if we truly fought, or there was some other probing intent." Li Jianqian let out a breath, strode forward, pushed open the hall doors, and said in a deep voice, "Go invite Purple Smoke Gate." Before his words had even finished, a streak of rapidly descending true fire fell from the sky. Li Minggong rode the true fire and landed swiftly before the hall, her voice urgent as she said gravely, "No need. Qianlizi of Purple Smoke Gate has already arrived above the lake and specifically requested to see the Li family head." Li Jianqian's heart immediately sank. He glanced at those around him and replied, "Invite her in." No sooner had he given the order than, after a few breaths, a woman of stunning beauty arrived in the hall, clad in white immortal robes with a glass white jade bottle tied at her waist. She was the current generation prodigy of Purple Smoke Gate, Qianlizi of the Glass Treasure Vase. Qianlizi not only acted in place of the Gate Master, she was also the master of Li Quexi of the Li family main lineage. Yet now her expression was cold, her gaze tinged with urgency. Her eyes locked onto Li Jianqian as she asked quickly, "I asked the family head to speak in private." The moment these words were spoken, Li Jianqian felt the situation worsen. He waved away those around him. As soon as the hall doors closed, Kainlezi stepped forward and asked anxiously, "Does the family head have any means to contact Taoist Master Zhejiang?" Li Jianqian hesitated slightly. She clearly realized that her words were startling and overly direct. The urgency on her face eased somewhat as she said softly, "Family head, please do not blame my rashness. Our Taoist master disappeared north of Jiangbei and has yet to return. The Blessed Land has already sent people to seek aid from the various supreme Yang Dao lineages. Taoist masters Zhugong and Kueki have gone to Jiangbei for search and rescue. We hope that your esteemed family can temporarily prioritize the greater situation and take charge in Jiangbei. Jiangbei really has encountered trouble." Kainlezi had lowered her stance to the extreme. In the Blessed Land, she stood beneath only one person and above tens of thousands. As a member of a supreme Yang Dao lineage, for her to personally come here and ask in such a restrained manner showed just how dire the situation had become. Li Jianqian listened to her words in a daze. A chill of dread rose sharply in his heart. He took 2 steps down from the main seat and asked, This matter concerning the true monarch was ordered by Liuxia." Kainlezi lowered her head and remained silent, as though she had not heard his words. Li Jianqian immediately composed himself. The doubts that had lingered in his heart suddenly found their answer, crashing down like thunder. Crimson Reef Island. The matter of Crimson Reef Island is a probe to see whether our family Taoist master has returned, or to test whether Taoist master Zimu has gone missing. He then asked, what instructions did the Taoist master Qiuhu give? Compared to the news Kainlezi had brought, Li Jianqian was clearly more interested in matters at the Purple Mansion realm. Kainlezi lowered her head slightly and sighed. "We have not received any news from the Taoist master." The implications of that single sentence were vast. Ningguan had no confidant like Kainlezi in the Azure Pond sect. It was entirely possible that sect master Tantai Jin was still in the dark even now. Once Tinglin and Ningguan left Lake Xian, it meant that everything along both banks of the river would fall into darkness. Matters concerning the true monarch of Mount Liuxia would certainly not be delayed in the slightest, yet without divine ability overseeing them, there was no guarantee that the forces along the river would not be drawn in. With Ningguan gone, Li Quanto at Lake Xian would be like a small boat amid wind and rain, left at the mercy of the waves. Li Jianqian could only say, "What a..." Bao Wanyu Sword Gate and Hengzhu Dao. A trace of helplessness flashed across Kainlezi's delicate face as she shook her head and said, "For Wanyu Sword Gate, Lord Ling Mei had already given instructions long ago. The Sword Gate never involves itself in matters of Jiangbei. As for Hengzhu Dao Gate, it is better left unmentioned." Her expression grew complicated at the mention of Hengzhu Dao Gate, a mix of disappointment and anxiety. She had clearly suffered an awkward setback in this matter, and even now, recalling it left her somewhat indignant. Li Jianqian fell silent for a moment. Seeing Kainlezi's expression shift from urgency to doubt, he realized that he could delay no longer. Just as expected, he heard her speak with a restrained, mournful tone. "As for the matter of Jiangbei, our Taoist master issued orders early on to ensure the protection of your esteemed family and to prevent any immortal carriage from crossing the river. Now that the Taoist master has gone missing, the situation is suspicious. We are not asking your family's Taoist master to rescue anyone, only to return as soon as possible to preside over the greater situation. This matter does not concern my side alone. Once the river is crossed, it will also involve Moongaze Lake. Now that neither of the 2 Taoist masters can be contacted, with Purple Mansion Realm cultivators absent, all deployments in Jiangbei are nothing but empty words. How can this be allowed?" Li Jianqian reacted extremely quickly and was not thrown off by her barrage of questions. He sighed inwardly as deep doubts arose in his heart. The Green Pine Supreme Yang Dao lineage. There are so many Purple Mansion Realm cultivators in Jiangnan. Even if Hengzhu Dao Gate does not act, could they really not assign a single one to stand in Jiangbei and preside over matters? Must they insist on inviting our family Taoist master back? How overbearing the supreme Yang Dao lineage was. Any Taoist master they sent could stabilize the riverbanks, yet she had come to invite Li Ziming. No matter how one looked at it, something was wrong. He stared at her heavily and said solemnly, "Senior Han, can the esteemed lords of the supreme Yang Dao lineage truly not preside over the greater situation? If it is merely a disappearance, does it really require so many seniors to go together? Please answer this junior honestly. Has Taoist Master Tinglin truly gone missing?" Kainlezi was momentarily stunned and found herself halted by his question. She reassessed the man before her, gritted her teeth, and answered, "This matter should not have been spoken of, but since fellow Taoist asks, I must answer. Soul lamps have dimmed within our blessed land. There must already be a great battle in the north. Taoist masters Zhugong and Kueki may be forced to act, and their final condition is unknown. It will be difficult for them to return here to hold the line. Taoist Master Hufu is tied down in Longdi and cannot spare himself. If your family's Taoist master does not return, there will be no one above to hold the field. It was impossible for Mount Luoxia to be unaware of such a thing happening at this critical juncture. Li Zhongqian's expression darkened as he asked, "What force dares to be so rampant? A Taoist master of the supreme Yang Dao lineage actually being ambushed by others outside?" Kainlizi's expression grew even more complicated. Her voice grew softer as she replied, "I suspect it is a calamity left behind from Qi Wang's profound heaven hearing. Back then, the Azure Pond sect and Purple Smoke Gate joined forces to scheme, and elders of your esteemed family were also involved. Now that two grand Taoist masters have fallen one after another, the north has begun to stir." Li Zhongqian let out a heavy breath. The woman before him continued, "Furthermore, with no Purple Mansion realm cultivators above, can your esteemed family truly be at ease regarding the Fei family matter?" Li Zhongqian fell silent. As a dignified immortal family, it was impossible that they lacked the means to warn Li Ziming. There was no way to casually brush this off before the well-informed Purple Smoke Gate. He could only reply solemnly, "This junior harbors no other intent. It is simply that I am young and this matter is not for me alone to decide. It still requires the elders to deliberate together." Kainlizi choked at once, took a step back, and said through gritted teeth, "Please make a decision swiftly." Li Zhongqian had only taken one step when both of them raised their heads together as they sensed distant tremors. Both were Foundation Establishment realm cultivators. How could they fail to detect such subtle sounds? They exchanged a glance and hurried out of the hall. As expected, torrential rain was pouring over the lake. Within the rain clouds that blotted out the sky stood cultivators one after another. Li Qiuan and the others were gazing northward with faces full of concern. In the northern sky, a sheet of golden light had shot straight toward the heavens. Blurred plumes of dust drifted upward as dark clouds vaguely gathered. The rain wavered, casting an ominous darkness over the scene. Foundation Establishment realm cultivators have fallen. More than one Foundation Establishment realm cultivator has fallen in the direction of Locust Soul Hall. "Where is Gbajai?" He turned with a dark expression, only to find Kainlizi standing beside him, staring blankly toward the north. Her fists were clenched as her entire body trembled, seeming both fearful and excited. Her beautiful eyes were locked tightly on the north, her lips silently murmuring. A chill ran through Li Zhongqian's body. He had long guessed that she was deeply entangled with a true monarch. He simply did not know whether it was the same one. He quickly stepped back, avoided her eyes, and shouted, "Senior." Chapter 1330, Demonic Disciple I. Kainlizi startled at Li Zhongqian's sharp shout. She lifted her head as if waking from a dream, her face pale as she stood frozen in the wind, then turned to say, "Someone has killed cultivators of the Locust Soul Hall." Li Zhongqian had feared that the Purple Smoke Gate leader might immediately ride the wind and rush north. Since she still seemed clear-headed, he finally relaxed, then grasped her meaning and asked softly, "Someone?" Kainlizi had said someone, not my lord. Perhaps the cultivators of the Locust Soul Hall were not killed by Lin Feng, but who among the current cultivators of the Locust Soul Hall could kill them, and who would dare to do so? Li Zhongqian watched her pale face as Kainlizi replied with a mix of fear and shock, "It should not be this early. It is far too early. At this point, those at the Qi cultivation realm should only be escaping from the hands of Foundation Establishment realm cultivators. How could they have fallen already, and more than one at that? Someone has interfered." The stage in Jiangbei had been set jointly by the supreme Yang Dao lineage and other forces on both banks. For something like this to happen now, and to stir up trouble while Tinglin was absent, was certainly not a good thing. Sure enough, one link follows another. Once things move, the waves are earth-shaking. Li Zhongqian's expression darkened at once as he asked quietly, "To dare act against cultivators of the Locust Soul Hall, would the North harbor any dissatisfaction?" A pale Kainlizi shook her head and pressed her lips together as she said, "This is nothing to the North. The Locust Soul Hall was our arrangement. As long as my lord is present, the stage will always exist, whether it is set in the east or the west, whether the clown is this one or that one. If others are dissatisfied with the stage we set up, they can come and tear it down. After all, whenever my lord's immortal carriage tour the world, some grotto heavens and secret realms always descend, to be shared among us, bringing benefits before and after. This time, someone has stirred the waters and torn down a corner of the stage." Li Zhongqian looked at her with a grave expression. If he understood correctly, the previous benefit had been the grotto heaven of Mount Dongli. His brows rose as he probed, "Senior Han, how should we respond at present?" The matter in Jiangbei was far too significant. With Tinglin gone, Li Jianqian very much did not wish for Qinlizi to handle everything. After all, there was a strong chance she was a woman left behind by a former true monarch, who knew what hidden dangers she carried. She was practically a ticking bomb. He did not know what kind of confidence Tinglin possessed to allow Qinlizi to control Purple Smoke Gate, and a dense cloud of doubt rose in his heart. How strange. Taoist Master Tinglin is also someone of careful calculation. Could she truly be certain that the true monarch would definitely not meet Qinlizi? As he pondered this, Qinlizi quickly steadied herself and said softly, "The urgent matter is to clarify what is happening in the north. I must ask your esteemed family to contact the capital Immortal Dao. I will go to Lake Xi'an to take a look." The woman had already turned her spirit wind and said softly, "As for the matter of the Taoist master, your esteemed family should make a swift decision. I am heading to Lake Xi'an and will first return to the Blessed Land to consult with the elders. If there is any news, simply send a letter to Purple Smoke Gate." She took her leave along with several members of the Purple Smoke Gate on the island. They swiftly rode the wind eastward. Only then did the members of the Li family gather. Finally, Qibuzhai arrived, his head lowered in slight dishevelment. Li Jianqian had him rise and asked, "What news is there? Have you found out who fell in the north?" Qibuzhai wore a grave expression. He stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Not yet, however I have received other news. Monks under Chengyan Gate's authority, led by Yeasa Chengmi, have already crossed Chengshui Marsh and entered the territory of Xuanmiao Temple, where they are openly promoting the methods of Buddhist cultivation." The capital Immortal Dao did not stop them, allowing this group of Buddhist cultivators to pass through the borders and head toward White Sea Stream. The territory there seemed somewhat chaotic. The last trace of hope in Li Jianqian's heart extinguished with that. If Yeasa Chengmi had reached Xuanmiao Temple's territory, then the entirety of the capital Immortal Dao lay between him and the Locust Soul Hall. It was naturally impossible that these two factions had come into conflict. It is very likely that someone else has intervened. Li Jianqian waved him away and returned to the hall in silence. He then relayed the information gathered so far. Li Minggong was the first to speak after a moment, saying quietly, "Two Taoist masters clashed in the north, and our family knew nothing of it, yet Crimson Reef Island deliberately launched a probing attack against us. That alone reveals their stance. As for Taoist Master Zhugong going north to render aid, it may not have been her intention to let this happen." Crimson Reef Island, Li Jianqian shook his head. Gu Hongjian cultivates merging fire. He cannot be judged by ordinary standards. Without the backing of Purple Mansion Realm divine abilities, Gu Hongjian would have been an unexpected opportunity for various factions to probe. As for the Grace Covenant Gate, even if Taoist Master Zhugong stands on the side of the Purple Smoke Gate, it is understandable for her to allow Gu Hongjian to probe the whereabouts of our Taoist master. This matter is far too complicated. Liuxia, Supreme Yang, and the Zhao Buddhist faction are all involved, with layers upon layers of Purple Mansion Realm forces beneath them. Without sufficient background, the situation cannot be seen clearly. I believe it is not appropriate to have the Taoist master return. Although Li Xuanxuan was openly worried, he too could distinguish between their priorities. After listening, he stroked his beard and said, "That is correct. The one who originally presided over the overall situation was Taoist Master Tinglin. As a figure of the Supreme Yang Dao lineage in the Purple Smoke Blessed Land, she was still harmed to the point of going missing. Now that none of the major factions wish to sit in that position, they have turned their attention to our family. As for the matters in the north, although they are extremely dangerous, our family still holds the advantage of acting first." The skies in the north were already pouring with torrential rain, and heavy rain was also falling over Moongaze Lake. Li Jianqian had already sensed the danger as Li Qian spoke softly from beside him. "I fear this is pressure from major powers. Whether it is the Supreme Yang Dao lineage or the forces opposing it, neither is something our family can afford to touch. We only need to give her a reply." Indeed, Li Jianqian seemed momentarily lost in thought as he reasoned aloud. "Let us first observe the situation. I will send someone to reply to Purple Smoke Gate, saying that our family has already issued a warning. As for when the Taoist master can arrive, or whether he will be intercepted by Chengxiao Gate along the way, that is another matter. That is the first matter. The second is that, once the Taoist master leaves, information from Zhongbei will fall into a fog. The north changes by the moment, and waiting for news to arrive could take who knows how long. The capital Immortal Dao must be properly reassured and used to observe Zhongbei, especially since Yehui was so selfish that he dared not leave behind even a single message. Currently, the capital Immortal Dao places great trust and reliance on our family." But what about the matter of Crimson Reef Island? "No matter," Li Jianqian picked up his brush, pondered for a moment, and wrote, "The earlier incident has now been clarified. It was caused by Gu Hongjian of the Gu family, in order to sow discord between our two families and scheme for the northern shore. I therefore fear that the matter of the Locust Soul Hall may undergo changes. If there is any news, please write back to inform me. Li Jianqian read it over twice, and only after confirming that others would not detect his family's involvement did he say, "The capital Immortal Dao has dealt with Crimson Reef Island for many years. The words cannot be too explicit, lest they think we are sowing discord and become wary for no reason. I will merely link the two matters together and let Guan Gongxiao draw his own conclusions." The capital Immortal Dao had left someone stationed at the Li family, so he could simply send it back. After folding the letter, Li Jianqian immediately had it delivered and then looked at those beside him with a solemn expression. "I ask everyone to keep watch over the four shores. This is absolutely not the time for carelessness. If fate stirs and some figure appears along the shore, they must be eliminated early, especially the eastern shore and the wilderness." Since someone in Jiangbei was already tearing down the stage, there was no telling what else might happen next. The lake was relatively safer, while the eastern shore was more prone to trouble. Everyone nodded. Chapter 1331, Demonic Disciple, II. It took half a day for the capital Immortal Dao to respond. Footsteps sounded outside the hall as the messenger entered, removed the concealment from his face, and said in a low voice, "Greetings, family head." Li Jianqian's brows rose as he said, "Rise." This man had thick brows and large eyes. He had an air of seasoned composure and a blade at his waist. He was none other than Gongsun Beifan of the capital Immortal Dao. He obediently knelt on one knee and paid his respects before rising. "Our lord has already received the family head's letter and deeply recognizes the viciousness of Guo Hanjian. He loathes him bitterly." He spoke a string of agreeable words, yet it was merely lip service. Li Jianqian neither confirmed nor denied them, instead carefully observing the man before him. His eyes were dull and sunken, while his face was pale, with faint traces of wounds visible on his face and neck. They had a grayish hue, as if he had fought desperately at the brink of life and death and nearly lost his life. Li Jianqian inwardly cursed the situation as bad and said gravely, "Guest cultivator Gongsun, what happened to you?" Gongsun Beifan had suffered such serious injuries, yet the capital Immortal Dao had not allowed him to recuperate properly and still sent him to deliver a message to the lake. This immediately made Li Jianqian sense intense danger. Sure enough, the saber cultivator replied with a bitter expression, "I was injured by someone. My lord, regarding the matter you asked about, my family's lord is also deeply perplexed. The killing of the Locust Soul Hall's cultivators was extremely abrupt and occurred at the very heart of the Locust Soul Hall. Our Dao lineage is overwhelmed and no longer has the energy to investigate it. As for the river, there are hardly any people left. I ask your esteemed family not to issue challenges, lest it lead to awkward incidents." Li Jianqian put on an expression of shock and anger and asked, "How could it have come to this?" Gongsun Beifan had always been a steady figure and had even once received praise from Li Xiaowei, yet even someone as composed as him spoke of this matter with fear and lingering dread. "Family head, a demonic disciple has appeared within our domain. It is unknown what inheritance he obtained. He rose among minor sects and families and suddenly broke through to the Foundation establishment realm, first killing the city lord, slaughtering the guards, and seizing spirit items. Not all of our cultivators were on the river. Several were stationed within our territory. When formations shattered and spirit talismans flared, they immediately went to as reinforcements. Who could have imagined that they would be killed by this demonic disciple who had just broken through to the Foundation establishment realm?" Li Jianqian could not help but pause in shock as he asked, "What happened next?" Gongsun Beifan shook his head, fear still lingering on his face, and said quietly, "I arrived first. I never expected him to throw 3 talismans right at me. Their power was terrifying. Had I not diligently cultivated spell arts over the years and possessed deep cultivation, I would not have survived. Such ancient talismans are treasures even my lord's household would reserve for their direct lineage, yet the 3 he threw out seemed like ordinary, mass-produced items. They were used without the slightest regret, allowing him to escape. At present, our cultivators have dispersed and are combing the entire White Yi stream inch by inch just to find this person. Since our sect master was short on manpower, I was sent here." Li Jianqian felt a chill run through his heart as he listened. This must be an important figure drawn out by a true monarch. By the time he was discovered, he was already at Foundation Establishment Realm. Back then, a mere Qi cultivation realm, Su Zio threw our family into disarray. This one waited until Foundation Establishment Realm to emerge. That is truly deadly. What is more, this person's intentions are unknown. If he seeks ties with a true monarch, the capital Immortal Dao will suffer a severe blow to its vitality and pay dearly for it. Li Jianqian clicked his tongue inwardly as he examined Gongsun Beifan's ashen expression. He knew that the capital Immortal Dao, being situated in Jiangbei, would have more troubles than his own family, but he had not expected matter as to be so fierce and dire. He questioned, "Then what does your lord intend?" A hint of resolve appeared on Gongsun Beifin's face as he said gravely, "My lord has said that this person will not have gone far and must still be in Jiangbei. If an opportunity arises, he hopes that your esteemed family can offer timely assistance and lend us a hand." No wonder the message brought by Guan Gongxiao had cursed Gu Hongjian so thoroughly. It turned out that the capital Immortal Dao had also run into a crisis. A demonic disciple had emerged within their territory, and the river was empty and undefended, yet Gu Hongjian was still provoking the Li family on another front. If the Li family truly grew enraged and crossed the river to kill, they would be assaulted on multiple fronts. It was only because Guan Gongxiao had always possessed a good temperament that he still had the presence of mind to write letter after letter. If his disposition were worse, he would have been enraged to the point of spitting blood. As a result of this turmoil, even Guan Gongxiao's request for help became awkward. How could Li Jianqian want to wade into this muddy water? Letting both anger and disappointment flash across his face, he sighed and said, "I understand that the teeth grow cold when the lips perish, and that we should support one another. Yet your gate and Crimson Reef are of one heart. How could Gu Hongjian understand this? Now that he holds a set of concealed Dharma artifacts, how would my family dare send anyone out?" Gongsun Beifin was not a thick-skinned person to begin with and appeared somewhat ashamed. Li Jianqian did not give him a chance to interrupt and said regretfully, "The Gu family daring to emerge from the eastern sea into the wilderness already made me suspect that something would happen in Jiangbei. This letter was meant as a warning. I did not expect that it would still be one step too late." He shook his head and said, "However, rest assured, my family also has many troubles on its hands and will not take the opportunity to cross the river. You should return first. Let news from Jiangbei come frequently so that our two families can assist each other at any time." Gongsun Beifin nodded repeatedly at his words and saluted. "Many thanks to the family head for your understanding." After speaking, he withdrew. Li Jianqian saw him out of the hall and watched him leave, pondering inwardly. In truth, Guan Gongxiao was not afraid of the Li family crossing the river to seize territory. Jiangbei was currently being roasted over fire. What benefit could there be? What he feared was that Li Jianqian might act to vent his anger and truly start a fight. Once there were casualties on both sides, unpredictable changes could very well occur. As for sending the heavily injured Gongsun Beifin to deliver the letter, I suspect it was not because they lacked manpower. It was to have the badly wounded cultivator travel back and forth. He is bait to lure out the fleeing demonic disciple. That is also a form of calculation. Fortunately, the capital Immortal Dao still has Guan Gongxiao. He knows when to lower his head and can maintain some control over the situation. Without Guan Gongxiao, both families would be in serious trouble right now. He had just turned around when a black-clad youth descended before the hall amid the torrential rain. His expression was grim as he knelt on one knee and reported, "Family head, the Locust Soul Hall has crossed the river." Li Jianqian abruptly raised his head and let out a heavy sigh inwardly as he thought, as expected, it could not be avoided. Trouble has arrived at last. He asked urgently, "How many forces are there? Is Taoist Bai personally leading them over?" Chen Yang wore a grave expression and nodded as he said, "Taoist Bai is indeed leading them across the river. They are currently within the wilderness territory." Chapter 1332, Dispute I. Wilderness. Rain poured down in torrents as dark clouds drifted south with the wind from Jiangbei, setting off surging, waterfall-like floods across the barren hilly land. Low buildings on the ground vanished rapidly in the heavy rain. Ant-like black silhouettes struggled briefly in the torrent before disappearing even faster, while streaks of flashing escape light lit up the sky and rushed in at high speed. At the forefront was a man clad in black robes. His aura was fierce and savage, and his eyes were brimming with sinister energy. Riding strands of black qi, he halted by the riverbank with an extremely grim expression as a group of black-robed cultivators followed closely behind him. At his waist hung the hazy yet dazzling Gui Dusk Profound token. He cast a heavy glance ahead, then raised the token and murmured several incantations, his eyes lighting up. The cultivators behind him called out, "Hall Master, this is already the wilderness. If we pursue further south, we will reach the azure." Pond Sect. Devil Cultivator's expression grew even uglier. The command token in his hand trembled as he replied darkly, "There is no escape light to the south. That man could not have flown so fast. According to the Gui Dusk Profound token, he should have fallen into the wilderness. Search, the Gui Dusk Profound token can track his position at every moment. We must not let him escape." The cultivators immediately dispersed. The one addressed as Hall Master held the command token and scanned the land with sinister eyes. Below, chaotic arguments soon broke out. Then, a woman rose on the wind to float before him. The woman held a gray ring in her hand and possessed a fair degree of beauty. The man's eyes brightened as he heard her speak softly. "So it is Hall Master Bai. I am Mayashui. May I ask what matter has brought you to our wilderness?" Taoist Bai glanced at the woman and saw that his subordinates were being held back below by merely two early Foundation establishment realm cultivators. He immediately knew the other party's background was not simple. Suppressing his displeasure, he raised an eyebrow and said, "The wilderness is ownerless land. Who is your master?" If Taoist Bai had not encountered a fortunate opportunity, Eastern Sea rogue cultivators like him would have been inferior even to Mayashui and would have had to treat her with great respect. But now he could assume the bearing of a master. Mayashui could only grit her teeth and say quietly, "Although the wilderness is ownerless, the large and small families near Moongaze Lake all originated from Moongaze Lake. By reason and sentiment alike, they are under our protection." Moongaze Lake. Taoist Bai hesitated inwardly but said aloud, "A few days ago, elders of your esteemed family were also attacked. Now something major has happened at the White River. It is likely the same group. Let us search together." Without waiting for Mayashui's consent, he lightly waved his hand, and the cultivators on both sides swiftly spread out into the surroundings. Mayashui's expression changed drastically as she shouted, "Hall Master Bai, what do you mean by this?" Taoist Bai's subordinates were a group of devil cultivators. There was not a single one among 10 who could be considered normal. How could such people be allowed to act without restraint in the wilderness? Yet Mayashui and her few companions were outnumbered. She could only crush a jade talisman and say coldly, "Hall Master Bai, think carefully. Many of our cultivators are on the river and can arrive in just a few moments. If this triggers a war between our two sides, it will not be a good outcome." Hui Juyan and Ding Weizeng are both engaged in battle with the capital Immortal Dao. Can they really rush back? We raced here at full speed. Cultivators along both banks of the river must already know. If these people leave, can the capital Immortal Dao truly stand by and do nothing? The devil cultivator found an excuse and offered a few perfunctory responses, but then saw radiant fire light up the western sky. Several dazzling rays arrived one after another, revealing figures within the clouds. The man in front had golden eyes and an expressionless face as he spoke coldly, "Hall Master Bai, what is this supposed to be?" Behind him, Chen Yang looked stern, while the slightly late Li Minggong and Buzhai stood quietly within the clouds. When Taoist Bai saw Li Jianqian, his irritation deepened, yet his expression shifted as he smiled. "Family head of the Li family, someone killed a Dharma protector in my locust Soul Hall and fled into the wilderness. I am here to conduct a search." Li Jianqian glanced at the motley crowd beneath him and replied indifferently, "Then this really is a delay. Foundation establishment realm cultivators fly exceedingly fast. Anyone who should have left has already left. What need is there to search? Could it be that the Hall Master is using the pretext of catching someone to harbor some ulterior motive?" Taoist Bai's expression turned cold and grim at the blunt words. This old devil cultivator did not truly regard Li Jianqian highly and cursed resentfully. "I have inherited a Purple Mansion Realm Dao lineage and am destined for the Purple Mansion Realm. At Moongaze Lake, only Li Xiaowei has a chance at the Purple Mansion Realm and can be considered my equal. You, Li Jianqian, a junior of a later generation, dare show me a cold face. You do not know what is good for you." After years of arrogance and tyranny, he had formed his own theory and placed his status nearly on par with Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. His face darkened, but he never expected that Chen Yang, standing across from him, hand on the sword at his waist and with eyes filled with vicious intent, harbored a remarkably similar thought, a useless dog. You scraped together a bit of luck and were pushed out as a scapegoat, yet you dare oppose my family. Li Jian. Jikayan would never allow Taoist Bai to venture into the wilderness willy-nilly. He did not retreat an inch and calmly met his gaze as an air of drawn swords filled the space. Just then, a group of cultivators flew in from the east, clad in golden robes. The leader wore a broad smile and called out, "Hall Master Bai, what brings you to the wilderness?" Taoist Bai was actually somewhat familiar with this person and smiled as he said, "So it is Taoist Tian of Profound Grace. I am here to search for someone who killed my men. He was severely injured and could not have gone far. I ask everyone to make some allowance. He stole my belongings and is afflicted by a killing art. Once my people draw close, they will be able to find him." Very well, very well. The cultivators of the Profound Grace Dao lineage agreed at once and let people descend. The Locust Soul Hall lacked many things, but it certainly did not lack hordes of devil cultivators. There were plenty of them, and a few leaders took groups down below. The Profound Grace Dao lineage had been a devil Dao in its early years and was internally chaotic. Matters concerning the true monarch would certainly not be disclosed to lower cultivators. Li Jianqian glanced over them and indeed saw no direct descendants of the Dai family. He thus knew these were all minor figures, with Zhu Gong heading north, who knew how tense things had become within Grace Covenant Gate. Unexpectedly, just as Daoist Tian agreed, a burly man wearing a golden mask spoke in a deep voice from the side. Daoist head, the Locust Soul Hall has many devil cultivators. If they are allowed to act unchecked, I fear the common people of the wilderness will be harmed. This remark left Daoist Tian in an awkward spot. A cold glint flashed in his eyes as he smiled and said, "Since fellow Daoist Faiyuzi has a compassionate heart, you may as well go along with them." Faiyuzi clearly had not been living well since joining Grace Covenant Gate, yet he was straightforward. Having said he would go, he truly went down. Bajai recognized him and revealed a look of indignation. Meanwhile, Li Jianqian frowned as he watched the coordinated exchange to the north, a sense of foreboding gradually forming in his heart. Despite a brief response, Daoist Bai saw that Li Jianqian remained unmoved. He raised the command token in his hand and performed a brief calculation, anxiety appearing on his face. Turning to Li Jianqian, he said softly, "Family head of the Li family, I will not go around in circles with you. The item that person took is of vital importance to my Miffin Dao lineage. I ask Moongaze Lake to grant me some face. If there are any casualties afterward and a few people die, my side will make up the numbers for you." To these Outer Sea devil cultivators, people were nothing more than countable resources. Li Jianqian gradually understood this and stood in the air, smiling as he said, "Hall Master, you may return the way you came. I cannot permit you to pass." No matter how the Locust Soul Hall struggled, it would never be a respectable force in the eyes of a true monarch. Moreover, someone who escaped from the hands of the Locust Soul Hall possessed considerable value for exploitation. Even if he was not a good person, withdrawing from the eastern shore merely to avoid offending the Locust Soul Hall would have extremely adverse consequences for the reputation of the Li family and the overall situation. They have brought matters right to our doorstep. I absolutely cannot refrain from intervening. Yet as soon as he spoke, Daoist Bai seemed to have anticipated his words as his eyes darkened. Chapter 1333, Dispute II. In Daoist Bai's eyes, the Li family was currently hollow. All of their capable subordinates had gone north. As long as he held back the 3 to 5 people before him and rushed into the wilderness at full speed, the Li family would be unable to stop him. Moreover, the wilderness only consisted of major and minor families affiliated with the Li family, not the Li family's Moongaze Lake itself. Was it really necessary for Li Jianqian to offend a future Purple Mansion realm cultivator like him over a few mortals? The behavior of Grace Covenant Gate made much more sense. Thus, the black-robed old man feigned politeness and applied pressure as he said, "Family head, you should think it over. I fear I must ask your esteemed family for guidance and have a brief exchange with our hall." A burly man with bulging eyes stepped forward at his command. His momentum was fierce, yet he reeked of blood-stained filth and did not truly look intimidating. He was full of confidence, but the golden-eyed man before him laughed heartily and replied, "Since the hall master has said so, then please wait a moment." He stepped forward and rummaged through his storage pouch, taking out a golden hammer and displaying it to the two of them. "This." Daoist Bai stared wide, never expecting Li Jianqian to erupt into action. The golden hammer lifted and swung down, leaving torrents of apricot yellow radiant fire in its wake. It smashed down on the man's face like lightning. Li Jianqian laughed, "What trash you are." Boom! The burly man had no time to react before the hammer smashed into his jaw. The blood visibly spurting through the air was instantly burned into black smoke by the radiant fire. Vast apricot yellow flames surged down in an instant, blazing brightly amid the torrential rain. A howl of searing pain echoed through the night. Radiant fire flowed across the man's body as he was smashed high into the air by the hammer, only stopping midair as he frantically tried to extinguish the flames. "Li Jianqian, are you insane?" Daoist Bai could never have imagined that Li Jianqian would continue grinning happily as he swung the hammer down. Moreover, as the dignified head of an immortal family with noble bloodlines and a cultivation at the early Foundation establishment realm, he should have retreated early and let his subordinates protect him even if a fight broke out. Yet he had dared to strike first. Rage surged through Daoist Bai's heart as he raised his hand, but another hammer strike was already crashing down. Apricot yellow radiant fire poured over him, boiling the yin qi throughout his body, while his Dharma sword still hung at his waist, not yet drawn. True fire drifted like feathers across the battlefield. Li Minggong had been watching closely and reacted even faster than Chen Yang. The cultivators below erupted into commotion, while several from Grace Covenant Gate stared in shock. They are fighting already. With Li Xiaowei absent, Moongaze Lake is already struggling against capital Immortal Dao. Are they supposed to add Locust Soul Hall on top of that? But there was no time for further thought. Li Zhongqian's second hammer swing came down, but he had already transformed into flames and withdrawn. Taoist Bai burned with rage, yet was pressed so hard by a succession of true fire that he could barely breathe. He chanted inwardly, Locust Shade's secret art. A sheet of dark green light surged from his body. Li Minggong merely frowned and set the six-cornered scarlet flame lamp before her. She pressed her red lips together and used the might of the Dharma artifact to breathe out a swath of true fire. She had cultivated the art of Miao Tai transformation of the Slaughter Jun Gate. This breath of flame, released with the aid of Purifeather Radiant Fire and a Dharma artifact, was terrifyingly powerful. Taoist Bai's Locust Shade Ghost was already unimpressive and of low grade. It was also further countered by true fire. The dark green radiance instantly vanished into ash, suppressing him until his face turned crimson. The devil cultivators had gathered around before the battle had even properly begun. Upon seeing this scene, they were struck speechless once more. I never heard that Li Minggong was this powerful. As the Hall Master of Locust Soul Hall and the so-called orthodox successor of the Miffin Dao lineage, Taoist Bai had been overwhelmingly domineering in recent days. Yet now he was being completely suppressed by a single burst of flame from Li Minggong, unable to move. It was a humiliation beyond measure. Even Taoist Bai himself flushed red and was feeling somewhat dazed. When he seized the Golden Tang Gate, Sidu Baio had little lifespan left and possessed no remarkable Dharma artifacts. There had been no need for him to act at all. A swarm of devil cultivators had rushed in and beaten him to death. Now that he was suddenly facing a true direct descendant of an immortal family, his superficial skills were instantly laid bare once the Locust Shade was burned by true fire. He only felt that the other party's flames were ferociously powerful, leaving him struggling immensely. After witnessing this display, not only were the onlookers stunned, even Li Minggong hesitated. He cannot even endure this much. We must not injure or kill him. Otherwise, if the North ends up short of manpower, it will ruin another family's affairs. But Taoist Bai was frantic with rage and hurriedly raised the Gooey Dusk Profound token, releasing its radiance. At once, a man clad in heavy armor, with a livid face and ferocious features, manifested through the Dharma artifact and lunged straight into the flames. This man was menacing in bearing. His sparse hair was grizzled, and his body radiated Zheng metal qi mixed with chilling yin qi, carrying a rather intimidating presence. Li Minggong just happened to rein in her strength at that moment, allowing the man to break through the flames and lunge forward. She swept her sleeve to block him, using surging true fire to hold him back. When her gaze fell on his face, her expression turned slightly complex. Sidu Bairo. This old man was Sidu Bairo, a late Foundation establishment. Inti Realm cultivator of the Sidu family who had covered everyone's retreat, and also the current master of the Golden Tang Gate. He had been stripped of his spirit artifact by Taoist Master Tianhuo and had his talismans taken as well as he fled in disgrace. Today, he had become someone else's Dharma artifact. Given his status and Golden Tang Gate's current awkward position, he could not leave even if he wanted to. He could only submit and be sacrificed. Taoist Bai had not come to engage in battle. He could only force down the fury in his heart, ride the wind upward, and seize the chance to charge downward. He had only dived a short distance when a blaze of light appeared before him and a figure emerged. This man had a swallow-shaped jaw and tiger-like whiskers, a lithe and vigorous build, and wore crimson armor. Scarlet light flared from his body like flames, and he held a staff in his hand. His eyes seemed empowered by some wondrous force, piercing through the air like awls and making others recoil at the sight. Taoist Bai felt a surge of danger rise in his heart and immediately halted, yet he did not expect another man holding a scroll to appear beside the man. Refined and gentle in demeanor, with an equally profound cultivation, the man lifted his brows and asked politely, "I heard that Hall Master Bai wishes to spar." Ding Weizhang was not so polite. He cast a cold glance at his opponent and leveled his long staff at the center of the opponent's brows, as if ready to strike at any moment, his voice icy and grim, "Bastard." Chapter 1334, Ghost Corpse I. This furious shout was like thunder, shaking the air with a deafening hum. The devil cultivators rushing in from both sides as reinforcements were stunned by the roar. A long staff suffused with red light smashed them on them one after another, carrying dazzling, illusory colors. Boom! The two devil cultivators who had followed along were both from the Eastern Sea and could not withstand such force. The one on the left was slightly better off as he managed to bring out a shield-shaped Dharma artifact in time. When the staff struck it, the yin qi evaporated, the tainted blood qi scattered, and the Dharma artifact emitted a shrill, painful hum. the devil cultivator immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and fell like a shooting star. The other devil cultivator was even weaker and did not possess a single Dharma artifact, yet he had still followed along to curry favor. When the staff struck him squarely in the chest, a bowl-sized hole instantly appeared on his torso. This devil cultivator had only come to show his face. He had never imagined the opponent would be so ferocious. The red light of the palace sun tiger surged through his internal organs, leaving them throbbing with pain. He could not care about anything else and immediately turned and fled into the distance. Although the bodies of devil cultivators were not that vital and most parts could be discarded, using just 2 strikes to injure 2 Foundation Establishment Realm devil cultivators made Taoist Bai inhale sharply. This man is actually this ferocious, yet it is said he excels at both long and short weapons. This is only a long staff. Even the legendary Situ Mo and Li Xiaowei were probably no better than this. Taoist Bai's heart was pounding as he watched. The command token in his hand leapt up, immediately enveloping him in black and white light as he rapidly chanted an incantation. At this point, he was only seeking a swift escape. Fortunately, Ding Weizeng did not continue attacking. He held the long staff in his hand and watched the 2 devil cultivators flee in panic. He did not give chase but instead stood in front of the master of the Locust Soul Hall. This sort of trash was actually chosen by a Purple Mansion Realm Dao lineage. Ding Weizeng was a skilled combatant. He had only grown more imposing in the years he had spent fighting on the Eastern Front and exterminating demons in the West. He did not need another sweep of his perception technique to tell him exactly how much weight this man carried. He was entirely beneath his notice. It was only because Taoist Bai was said to be a successor of the Miffin Dao lineage and owed favors to the Purple Mansion realm that he was treated with some respect. Otherwise, Ding Weizeng could have smashed this kind of man to death with a single swing. To have such trash come knocking was nothing but humiliation, so his gaze turned icy. On the other hand, Qi Juyin, standing to his side, was far more cautious. He was not focused on the man in front of him at all. He was only afraid that Ding Weizeng might act on impulse and cripple Taoist Bai with a single blow, causing trouble and ruining matters in the north. 9/10 of his attention was fixed on Ding Weizeng, his fingers holding a seal without moving. Taoist Bai's surge of anger and lingering luck vanished in an instant, and he finally realized the situation. Tian before him. What are Guan Gongxiao and his people even doing? Such a good opportunity to make the Li family lose face, yet they did not even know how to stall these people at the river and instead let them through. Utterly useless. Whether it was the Palace Sun Tiger or the Everbright platform, taking out either one would be enough to restrain his Locust Shade ghost. The Everbright platform also possessed binding and entangling effects and was already threatening his life. I need to create some distance first. The technique in his hand flashed and Taoist Bai vanished from where he stood. He reappeared not far away and was just about to speak when he realized the entire situation was gradually slipping out of control. Things had already turned into a chaotic melee. The puppet refined from Sidu Bio had possessed decent cultivation in life, but it was greatly inferior after being turned into a Dharma artifact. Although Zheng Metal was not particularly afraid of true fire, the yin qi on its body had become a weakness. Once it was bound by true fire, it could not advance an inch. Instead, Li Minggong still had a free hand to block the devil cultivator on the other side. Chen Yang also drew his sword and stepped forward. He cultivated the well-known Jing Dragon King of Jiangnan and had no trouble holding back several enemies. However, Kebuzhai and Ensiwei were weaker and could only barely battle evenly against devil cultivators of similar cultivation. As for Li Jianqian, apricot yellow flames wove around him as he wielded the golden hammer and chased after devil cultivators to strike them. Whether he could defeat them or not was beside the point. The people below were not fools. No one dared battle the head of the Li family, and each avoided him in wide arcs. Yet Li Jianqian did not plunge in without caution. Although he appeared reckless, he did not stray far from Qi Juyin. He carefully surveyed the cultivators before him, as if searching for something. Soon he caught sight of a young man among the devil cultivators. The young man was dressed in black and had only just reached the Foundation Establishment realm, yet the Dharma light around him did not appear dim. He stood quietly among the cultivators and did not make a move. These devil cultivators had all achieved their cultivation in the Eastern Sea. They were all advanced in age and had relied on a reckless surge of blood qi to luckily reach the Foundation Establishment realm. They practiced a mishmash of techniques, and none of them looked particularly presentable. Thus, the sudden appearance of a handsome and youthful figure was impossible to overlook amid this bunch of crooked melons and misshapen dates all around. He did not make contact. When he saw the devil cultivator standing there with a sword at his side, he quickly withdrew, silently taking note and growing alert in his heart. The forces beneath the Locust Soul Hall are not simple either. It is not suitable to get entangled further. Li Zhongqian was still subtly probing as Taoist Bai used a spell to barely extract himself. After glancing at the situation, his face turned livid with anger. Although the Locust Soul Hall had far more cultivators, their quality was abysmal. None of them had any loyalty to speak of, as they crowded together and slacked off. For a moment, there were hardly any who could descend to conduct a search, making Taoist Bai feel colder and colder inside. Moreover, Ding Weizeng and Qi Juyan charging in would be like tigers entering a flock of sheep. When he thought of the Gui Dusk profound token in his possession, Taoist Bai no longer feared for his life unless a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator appeared in person. The fear in his heart eased slightly. After being cursed at by Ding Weizeng, he could not save face, and the Dharma light surging with yin purging karmic force had scorched his face with a burning pain. He could only turn to look at Qi Juyan and smile as he said, "So it was to exchange pointers. We already traded a move or two just now. Your family's fairy Minggong truly keeps her depth hidden. To think her spell arts have already reached such a level." Ding Weizeng barely kept his face neutral, yet his large hands were gripping the staff, as if he might smash it down on Taoist Bai's head at any moment. Seeing Li Zhongqian's glance, Qi Juyan clasped his hands and replied, "The wilderness is a land my family has sheltered for generations. It is not suitable for searching. Your hall should seek another method. If our two sides were to clash, I fear it would only benefit those with ulterior motives." Taoist Bai exclaimed, "Exactly so." Qi Juyan had given him an out. After those two strikes from Ding Weizeng, Taoist Bai became even more compliant. He nodded repeatedly, his gaze sweeping the ground unwillingly, and returned without a word. The devil cultivators below were even more adept at following the wind. After charging about for so long without anyone descending, when it came time to flee, each ran faster than the last, retreating along with Taoist Bai. After only a few steps, they ran into people from the Grace Covenant Gate. Taoist Bai was so embarrassed he could not lift his head and hurried past, only to see a streak of escaping light fly rapidly over from the opposite bank. It was a disciple dressed in black. The man's face was covered in blood and he looked utterly miserable. When he reached them, he cried out in anguish, "Hall Master, esteemed lords, Beikou Prefecture, the storehouses of Beikou Prefecture, were secretly breached and entered. All the many treasures and Dharma artifacts accumulated over these years have been taken." The expert moved in a strange manner and possessed terrifying strength. With all the lords away, this subordinate could not stop him. Taoist Bai felt as if he had been struck by lightning and shouted in disbelief, "What?" The Beikou Prefecture region was rich in spirit ores, and the esteemed families of Hidden East had settled nearby. It was an extremely important location. Nearly all the spirit resources and Dharma artifacts accumulated over the years had been stored there, and even Black Rat, one of the 8 great Dharma protectors, had been stationed to guard it. Such an incident left Taoist Bai both shocked and furious as he demanded, "Where is Black Rat? Where did that bastard die off to?" The man in black shook his head and said sorrowfully, "My Lord Black Rat Dharma Protector was the first to notice and pursued together with Beikou Prefecture Prefect Wang Bakong. Unexpectedly, although that person was only at the Qi cultivation realm, his escaping light was extremely fast, and he managed to get away." Taoist Bai had just lost a great deal of face. Now, he had also lost treasures he deemed extremely important. His mood was already at its lowest. He was so furious that darkness was flickering in his vision. He cursed useless trash. 2 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, 1 at Early Foundation Establishment Realm and 1 at Mid Foundation Establishment Realm, yet you let a mere Qi cultivation realm escape. Do you know which one it was? The man immediately trembled at his rage as he answered. It was a rogue cultivator from Beikou Prefecture. He had beaten up a young master of the Wang family not long ago and was rescued by the desert rogue cultivator Bai Yinzi. No one expected the two of them to hit it off and actually come back to steal the goods. When he heard that it was only 2 rogue cultivators, Taoist Bai instantly flew into a rage and shouted harshly, "Investigate, come back with me. Even if we have to turn the entire White River stream upside down, you will find the whereabouts of these 2 for me." The Gui Dusk profound token at his waist immediately emitted soft, illusory colors that did not dim in the torrential rain, making those who looked at it feel as if they would sink into it, unable to look away. Taoist Bai turned his head to find that the cultivators around him all wore respectful expressions, their eyes burning with fervor as each one appeared more eager than the last. Yet seeing this scene, Taoist Bai thought again of what he had just suffered from the Li family. His chest felt stifled as anger surged uncontrollably within him. "When we attacked the Golden Tang Gate and could loot the mines, every one of you charged faster than the next, eager to strip Sidu Bio of everything, fighting among yourselves until nothing could even be recovered. Now that we are in the wilderness, you all stand around like wooden chickens, slow to act, practically kneeling like grandsons before the Li family. Now, hearing that a Qi cultivation realm cultivator seized the treasures and supplies of an entire prefecture, your eyes light up. You clearly want to claim it all for yourselves. These devil cultivators were nothing more than a rabble. If there were benefits to be had, they would charge and fight, but without any benefits, they would do nothing at all. Each only wanted to be a local tyrant in whatever territory they were given. The so-called 8 great Dharma protectors were not the strongest either, merely those closest to him. At this moment, Taoist Bai finally stopped being stingy and said coldly, "Those who fought alongside me just now will return to the hall with me later. You will not be lacking in rewards." Those 3 were instantly overjoyed. The other devil cultivators, smiling on the surface but resentful inside, seemed to have heard something extremely important. Some clutched their arms while others hugged their legs, all claiming injuries as they cried out dramatically. There were even a few who stood calmly within the crowd. Though they said nothing, their eyes quietly swept over the gooey dusk profound token at Taoist Bai's waist, revealing expressions of both greed and apprehension. What exactly did that person take to make him mobilize so many forces, even at the cost of offending Moongaze Lake, disregarding even Purple Mansion realm powers, and insisting on searching another's territory? Chapter 1335, Ghost Corpse II. The Wilderness. Li Jianqian glanced at the retreating cultivators, then looked down to see the large and small families of the wilderness all gazing upward. His golden eyes swept across the scene as he fell into silent contemplation. The culprit crossed the river and was saved by my family. We even fought a battle in the wilderness. I do not know which scheme this belongs to, nor whether it involves someone from the north. In any case, the wilderness must be handled carefully. If Lin Feng had killed Taoist Bai's men and took the items across the river, that would indeed form a favorable tie. However, Lin Feng remaining in the wilderness would not be a good thing. The more people came into contact with him, the greater the trouble it would bring to his own family, making him difficult to deal with. But if it was not Lin Feng, and instead some family deliberately disrupting the arrangement, or some figure from the opposite shore, then it would be even more inappropriate to make careless contact, since it would only end up dragging trouble onto oneself. As he was pondering, the cultivators on both sides gathered around him. Ding Weizeng, his expression grave, stepped forward and saluted as he said, "Greetings, family head. Matters here are settled, but we must swiftly return to reinforce the river. Although the capital Immortal Dao has withdrawn due to trouble in the north, we must still guard against these people taking risks to cross the river." Ding Weizeng deeply despised the capital Immortal Dao and was most wary of the north. Even now his thoughts were about the river, so Li Jianqian followed his lead and nodded. "I will trouble Dharma Protector Ding to make this trip. Dharma Protector Kui may remain. As for matters by the river, I will need you to keep a closer watch." Ding Weizeng rode the wind and departed first. Kui Juyan walked up next and asked quietly, "Family head, the Locust Soul Hall has crossed the river and everyone saw it. The person who was rescued should still be in the wilderness. How should this be handled?" Li Jianqian exchanged a glance with Li Minggong. Naturally unwilling to intervene too deeply, he replied, "Relax for now. We do not yet know what sort of person he is. There is no need for us to be too deeply involved. Let him remain and do not seek him out, lest we become entangled in the end. Simply leave behind a single favor." Kui Juyan agreed, and everyone withdrew on the wind. Before reaching the lake, they saw Li Xuanxuan standing in the rain, stroking his beard with evident unease. It was unclear how long he had been standing there. Li Jianqian quickly explained the situation to him in detail, then had Chen Yang escort him back. They soon arrived at the hall, where Li Qiuan was waiting inside the main hall, silently looking at several jade slips in her hands. Upon seeing Li Jianqian, an anxious look surfaced on her face as she asked, "How did it go?" Li Jianqian shook his head and replied, "Hard to say. Taoist Bai is astonishingly incompetent. Aside from a single command token, he is utterly useless. The devil cultivators under him are even more chaotic. It really is difficult for him. After all this trouble over 2 years, he has not managed to find even one trusted subordinate." He sat upright in the main seat, then said with a solemn expression, "But it also shows one thing. That so-called gooey dusk profound token is truly no ordinary item. Taken alone, it is at least an ancient technique-grade Dharma artifact. Who knows how many methods a Taoist master left inside it, or whether there might be 1 or 2 Purple Mansion realm divine abilities within to preserve his life. The Lords of the North naturally have nothing to fear, but if he is pushed too far and lashes out indiscriminately at our family, it would ruin matters. That is why we did not press him too hard and let him withdraw." Li Qiuan let out a breath of relief and shook her head, saying, "It is best to have him stay far away. There are no direct descendants in the wilderness now, so let them do as they please." Indeed, Li Jianqian sighed and said, I saw a few characters under his command who might bring trouble later. That fellow is no different from a plague god. Even striking him would dirty one's hands, so it was best to send him away early. Worry flashed across Li Qiuan's face. She placed several jade slips in her hand onto the table. Each one had a dull texture and seemed to be quite old. She said softly, just now, while you were out with the Dharma protectors and guest cultivators, someone came from the river. He reported that he was acting on the orders of Li Quantao, who guards Lake Xian, and brought these items to ask for our family's opinion. Li Jianqian immediately grew suspicious and asked, what did he say, and where is he now? He is still on the island. A trace of helplessness appeared on Li Qiuan's face as she continued gently. Li Quantao guards Lake Xian, which is close to several sea inlets. Some days ago, he encountered a group of people whose behavior seemed suspicious, so his subordinates detained them for questioning. As it turned out, those people actually claimed to be from the Locust Soul Hall. The people of Lake Xian naturally did not believe them. After all, no matter how shabby the Locust Soul Hall might be, its members would still carry identification tokens. So they opened these people's storage pouches to verify their identities, and only then discovered that they cultivated the Mifan Dao lineage of Mount Zioshi. Li Jianqian fell into contemplation as he listened, and Li Qiuan finished. Only then did those people realize they had caused trouble. They reported it to Li Quantao, and after questioning them one by one, it became clear that they were all surviving inheritors left behind from Mount Zioshi back then. Now, having heard that the Mifan Dao lineage was flourishing again, that someone had obtained a Purple Mansion Realm command token and could establish a Dao lineage recognized by the various sects, they finally came to seek refuge. The more Li Jianqian listened, the more it felt off to him. After pondering for a long moment, he asked doubtfully, could a group of real players have arrived? Before Li Ziming broke through to the Purple Mansion Realm, there were already 3 factions in Jiangbei: Floating Cloud, Hidden Cloud, and Brahma Cloud. In truth, these Dao lineages had been falsely established by Purple Mansion Realm cultivators to open a hidden trove, luring the descendants who had fled Mount Zioshi to come and seek refuge. Later, it indeed succeeded, drawing in enough people for Chengyun Gate to instigate the underground palace incident. Sure enough, Li Qiuan nodded, clearly harboring the same doubts, and replied, moreover, the Mount Zioshi Dao lineage that was lost abroad was not limited to just 1 or 2 lineages. Chengyun Gate only managed to lure 1 or 2 with its trap. There must be more out there. It seems that those overseas remnant lineages actually took the great commotion stirred up for the Lords of the North seriously and truly regarded the Locust Soul Hall as a continuation of the Dao lineage. They believed there was some protection or favor to be found. This matter was unexpected, yet still reasonable. Li Quantao had not known the full story, so he had genuinely grown wary. With Qianlizi away and unable to contact Ning Wan, he had sent the matter to the lake instead. These people stayed in the outer seas for so many years without being exposed, yet were captured as soon as they crossed Lake Xian. If Li Quantao is now inexplicably entangled in such a matter, he has probably already stepped deeper into the game. Li Jianqian found it both amusing and troublesome. Li Quantao's move was clearly favoritism. After all, these jade slips had already been unsealed and anyone could read them. Storing them in the treasury would also count as a gain. Yet this group had traveled thousands of kilometers from the outer sea, and it was unclear what role they were playing. They were not easy to provoke at present. Li Minggong took one of the jade slips and said softly, does the old elder know about this? Li Qiuan did not yet understand why she was asking and replied hesitantly, the old elder has been waiting outside the lake for you to return, so he does not know yet. Li Jianqian, however, understood what Li Minggong meant. Li Quantao had been used by the Ning family in the scheme concerning the Hongsu inheritance, something the old elder had already found hard to bear. Now that the Taoist master was missing, and the situation only growing more dangerous by the day, Li Quantao still concerned himself with Moongaze Lake. Li Jianqian feared that this would only cause distress if the old elder heard of it. He walked a few steps around the hall and asked, how is this cultivation method? Li Qiuan's expression was complicated as she replied, most of these manuals are ones we have already had before. However, there is one cultivation method that is somewhat interesting. It is called the Huai Water Ghost Yin Refining Method. It uses the remains of cultivators to craft Dharma artifacts. The technique must be cast before death in order to preserve the body and prevent it from dissipating into a spirit item. It is quite ingenious, but it has special requirements for the immortal foundation. She took out the jade slip, showed it to the 2 of them, and explained, this kind of Dharma artifact is not something just anyone can refine, and each person can only refine one. Once refined, it is called a ghost corpse. It is best refined by cultivators of Hurricane Ghost Yin. If not, the next best would be Supreme Shaman, Ziyuqi, or Baleful Essence. At the very least, it must belong to the same broad ancient category. others generally have no chance of successfully refining it. Li Minggong skimmed it briefly. Even without recognizing it outright, she could tell just by listening and replied, "It looks sinister at a glance and is clearly not a good thing. This is exactly the method Taoist Bai used to refine Sidu Bio." Li Qian nodded solemnly. When she saw Li Jianqian's sudden look of realization, she inferred, this at least proves, that Taoist Bai did not come away empty-handed. He must hold quite a few inheritances of the Miffin Dao lineage. As for how he obtained them, that is something worth deliberating. Li Jianqian nodded. He wiped out Brahma Cloud. Who knows where he seized it from? After all, his slogan back then was that Ping Wangzi had refined an infant and defiled the Miffin Dao lineage, and that he was upholding justice by eliminating him. It might very well have been some kind of devil technique, but if it did not come from Fanyun. Li Minggong thought carefully for a moment and said softly, "I saw that Sidu Bio's ghost corpse flew out from the Gui Dusk Profound token. Either this Dharma artifact can contain such a thing, or this spell art came from the Gui Dusk Profound token itself." Li Jianqian and Li Qian suspected the latter as well. Li Jianqian paused first, making sure there were no Purple Mansion realm cultivators nearby, before speaking in a grave tone. If it truly came from the command token, then Purple Smoke Gate must be holding quite a number of Miffin Dao lineage inheritances. This Dharma artifact was likely not crafted on the spot based on what I said back then, but was designed with great care and probably planned long ago. My casual mention of the Miffin Dao lineage simply provided the opportunity for exactly what they wanted. On closer thought, it is not strange at all. The most famous Dao lineage in Jiangbei is Miffin. It has already been paved repeatedly by many Purple Mansion realm cultivators. From Foundation Establishment realm cultivators down to ordinary mortals on the ground, everyone knows the name Mount Zioshi. Even if I had not brought it up, anyone trying to raise a banner in Jiangbei would think of Miffin, and only Miffin would be the most credible. He said softly, that is to say, there was probably a consensus on this matter much earlier, with Miffin decided upon from the start. Kainlizi once said that each arrival would leave behind some secret realms or grotto heavens. This time, it is likely that Miffin will descend. Li Jianqian's voice grew even softer as he continued. Then could it be that the Gui Dusk Profound token is not some temporary stopgap at all, but a genuine supreme treasure with the chance to open the Miffin's secret repository? Li Qian's expression turned solemn as she exchanged a look with Li Jianqian, and the same four words appeared in both their minds. Immortal Mirror Fragment. Chapter 1336, Old Enemies I. Back then, when Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven had been thrown into turmoil by Chu Yi, it had fallen straight down from the Great Void. Countless spirit items and Dharma artifacts had plummeted into the mountains, causing spiritual energy to surge throughout Mount Dongli, with all kinds of spiritual qi drifting about, nourishing who knew how many cultivators. Among the 3 sects and 7 gates of Jiangnan, the stronger ones made enormous gains, while even the weaker ones managed to get a share. As for the 2 Taoist masters, Qiushui and Yuansu, who presided over the matter, no one knew how many treasures they obtained. Now that another grotto heaven was about to descend, the Dharma sword the Li family was determined to obtain lay right before their eyes and absolutely could not be lost. If such a major event truly occurred, they might have to cross the river to seize it. This will not be easy. If Taoist Master Tinglin failed to return for a long time, and there was no Taoist master to preside over the overall situation, how could Jiangbei allow people from the 3 sects and 7 gates to come and go freely? Even if Taoist Master Tinglin did return, she could not be compared to Qiushui and Yuansu of the past. Those two were figures from the era of Li Jianquan, and Qiushui even had a golden core realm power backing her. At that time, the supreme Yang Dao lineage could enter in an orderly fashion, divide up territories, and freely plunder the grotto heaven. Instead, Li Jianqian grew worried again. If Taoist Master Tinglin could act as Yuansu and Qiushui once did, then while the chance of the sword falling into the Li family's hands was extremely slim, it might still be possible to exchange for it later. But if Tinglin lost control over Jiangbei, then who the grotto heaven would ultimately belong to, and how it would be handled, would become a complete mystery. Li Jianqian picked up several jade slips and had them copied and sent back to the clan. Li Qian reminded him, with both Taoist masters Tinglin and Qiuhu absent, we still need to reply to Li Quantao. He has always been well-intentioned toward our family, so we should try to help him as much as possible. Li Jianqian glanced at Li Minggong beside him. Seeing her nod in agreement, he nodded as well. That makes sense. After all, it is a friendship of many years. We can reply this way. Tell him to let the people pass, inform him that the Taoist master is currently missing and that there may be changes in Jiangbei, and advise him to watch his words and actions and proceed with utmost caution. Naturally, Li Jianqian would not reveal too much. Before the two could respond, he asked doubtfully, Did Li Quantao mention his offspring? No, Li Qian replied. After entering Jiangbei, that one was like a stone thrown into the sea, failing to stir up even the slightest ripple. There has been no letter sent back either. We only know that his life jade is intact. Li Jianqian wrote the letter as he listened and replied, then there is even less reason to say more. Let it be like this. Tell him clearly that with the reputation of the Azure Pond sect, the forces in Jiangbei would not dare do anything to his child. He can rest assured. Li Minggong finally interjected. I did hear something. The so-called supreme ruler of northern Mount Yue, named Dili Yaoji, came to the lake recently to pay respects. He said he was preparing to break through to the Foundation establishment realm and hoped to receive some favor from the lake. Dili Yaoji? Li Jianqian frowned. The name sounded somewhat familiar to him, but it took a moment. I remember him. He has held the throne of northern Mount Yue for so many years and has only just endured to this stage. His junior, Dili Guang, is still serving at Uncle Zhuliuo's side and counts as a loyal retainer. I wonder what cultivation method he practices. Zheng Metal? Li Minggong responded with a smile. He did make preparations for that method. Although it is rather unsightly, there are others within the family of the same qi that can replace it, which shows he did put some thought into it. I plan to take him back to the family, switch his cultivation method, and send him into seclusion. Li Jianqian agreed, which counted as approval. Li Minggong then said softly, also, I heard that the family's 32 mansions' purple radiant spirit pins are nearing completion, so I came to ask you about it. I know, Li Jianqian shook his head. He had been overseeing this matter all along and knew it best. He said, it truly is about to be completed. The scale of resources consumed by this purple mansion realm formation is unprecedented in the past 100 years. It nearly drained all the relevant spirit resources in our family's possession and even drove up the price of such resources across the entire northern Yue region by half a point. In the later stages, we even supplied the Purple Smoke Gate with a large amount of spirit patties. The Li family system differed from that of other houses, so its output of spirit patties ranked among the top few among the Purple Mansion realm powers of Yue State. When there were too many spirit patties, it naturally lost value, and the Purple Smoke Gate was clearly doing them a favor as well. The next step requires Purple Mansion realm cultivators to set up the formation, but Taoist Master Tinglin has gone missing. Even if she were not missing and had yet to return, we would not dare let another family's Purple Mansion realm cultivator handle the formation alone. It will probably take 2 more years. Li Minggong nodded. The formation is not urgent. What matters is settling things properly and sending the people of the Purple Smoke Gate away first. With the north and south in turmoil right now, the matter of Taoist cow has set a precedent. If more people come to the lake to take disciples later, it will only create further trouble. Li Minggong then drifted away. Only then did Li Jianqian sigh and said, our elder has cultivated some fine flames over these years, fighting her way through the conflicts between north and south, and has grown ever more formidable. Although Li Minggong was not as outstanding as Li Chenghui, her cultivation had steadily deepened as the years passed. She was now qualified to serve as a peak master among the 3 sects and 7 gates. Li Qian reminded him again, Jiangliang is getting on in years. You can let him return to take a look at Qingdu and Jade Court. It is time for him to go around and test his mettle. Li Jianqian nodded thoughtfully but did not issue any orders right away. He let her leave, then walked around the Great Hall, looking toward the north. The heavy rain still had not stopped, and dark clouds filled the sky. If the gooey dusk profound token was truly a scheme by Taoist Master Tinglin, then which family does not want the supreme Yang Dao lineage to benefit? He quickened his steps when he noticed the dense rain clouds overhead. A streak of light approached from afar and descended onto the island. The sound of footsteps soon drew near. Chen Yang, clad in black armor, stopped before him and bowed as he reported, Family head, news has come from the Azure Pond sect in the south. A lord of Hengzhu Dao Gate has broken through to the Purple Mansion realm, attained the Dao and divine ability, and taken the Dao title Nanzun. The Hengzhu Dao, Li Jianqian paused slightly, feeling some regret, and asked, which generation is he from? Chen Yang hesitated briefly before replying. It is said that this Taoist master spent nearly 30 years to succeed in breaking through. His seniority is actually quite high, close to that of Taoist master Hengxing. His secular name is Bai Chengwan. Bai Chengwan, I have never heard of him. Li Jianqian nodded silently. It truly was a name he had never heard before, and he could only sigh as he said, I do not know whether it is the strength of their blessed land or some exceptional method they possess, but the Hengzhu Dao Gate truly has great fortune. Another Purple Mansion realm cultivator has been added, and they are now poised to become the leading great Dao lineage of Yue State. It is just a pity that this Dao lineage has a strange temperament, does not get along with others, and has even formed enmity with the Golden Feather sect. It is hard to say whether this is good or bad. He pondered for a moment and then said, "By both sentiment and reason, we must send people to offer congratulations. Reply to the Azure Pond sect as well, and say that the Taoist master has not displayed divine ability for a long time. Ask whether contact can be made and give Tantijin a warning or two." Chapter 1337, Old Enemies, II. Mount Zyaoshi. An air of desolation hung over the sparsely vegetated slopes of the mountain range of Mount Zyaoshi. The rare torrential rain made it appear even more barren. Pale yellow rainwater flowed down the mountain gullies, washing away what little sand and soil there was. The sand and soil flowed eastward through the tributaries, quickly merging into the broken channel of the ancient Hue River and flowing into White River Stream. Yet several illusory glows of divine abilities floated within the dark torrential rain clouds. A man in a brown robe, with pale gray eyes, stood in the heavy night sky. His hands were clasped behind his back as he walked upon dark light formed by divine ability, his gaze sweeping across the mountain. Mount Zyaoshi had once been the mountain gate of the Miffin sect and was the source of the present Miffin Dao lineage. Although it had once been occupied by Buddhist cultivators, the mountains were still filled with broken walls and ruins that carried an ancient air, appearing even more desolate in the downpour. After taking a single look, he pressed his palms together before his chest and exhaled a strand of dark yellow light that spread across the area. He focused on circulating his divine ability, as though searching for and calculating something. On the other side stood a woman in red robes, her features somewhat youthful. She stood half a step behind him, her head slightly lowered in a display of respect, and spoke in a low voice, "Lord Kueki, have you gained anything?" This woman was naturally Taoist Master Zhugong. She hailed from the outer sea and cultivated earth virtue. In her early years, she had also been labeled a devil cultivator. Now, facing a cultivator of the supreme Yang Dao lineage, she was naturally very deferential. The man in brown robes had a resolute expression on his face. His gaze remained fixed on the mountain as he shook his head and spoke, "I cannot determine it clearly. Let us wait a bit longer. In any case, the northern Buddhists will not escape. There may even be more than one group." Taoist Master Zhugong immediately felt troubled fear showing on her face. She clearly knew this concerned the matter of Qi Wang's profound heaven hearing and said softly, "What are we to do? If it truly is those people of Pygia, how could we withstand them with only 2 early-stage Purple Mansion realm cultivators? If something were to happen, it would be earth-shaking." With just them, Taoist Master Kueki was clearly far calmer than she was. He even frowned slightly in irritation, evidently harboring little fondness for Zhugong in his heart. However, out of regard for Tinglin and because this was a critical moment, he still spoke in a measured tone. "It is not just Pygia. Pygia alone could not accomplish this. Back then, Senior Zaipai seized metallic essence from the hands of a group of monks, offending the veteran Mahajelu, who already possesses T. He's strength of the late-stage Purple Mansion realm. I was not present at the time, so I do not know how many other factions were involved. If they all act together, that is when things truly become troublesome." Taoist Master Zhugong grew even more uneasy at this, her heart sinking immediately. Although Kueki appears mild on the surface, at heart he still carries the lofty arrogance of the supreme Yang Dao lineage. He bears no goodwill toward me at all. Getting close to him will not lead to a good end. She remained vigilant inwardly, yet her resolve to rescue Tinglin did not waver. At the moment she had no choice but to follow this man, lowering her gaze and restraining her expression, while Kueki said in a calm, focused voice, "There is no need to worry too much. We have already arrived and they will not be able to hide for long. Tinglin and Ningguan will at most suffer some light injuries. These Buddhist cultivators all harbor their own schemes and will not dare tear things apart with my supreme Yang Dao lineage. Moreover, those two carry many treasures on them. Nothing serious will happen." Zhugong let out a deep sigh of relief. Kueki quickly released the radiance in his hand, as if dispelling some form of concealment, and began calculating with his fingers. At that very moment, the torrential rain abruptly stopped. Endless multicolored light burst forth in the sky, transforming into a massive curtain of radiance that descended from above with overwhelming force. Taoist Master Kueki reacted instantly. The calculations in his hands dissipated at once, and a bronze sword flew out from his sleeve. The bronze sword was iron blue in color, adorned with a golden tassel. Agile as a swallow, it shot skyward and temporarily held back the descending radiance. Boom! Dark light and multicolored radiance collided between heaven and earth, illuminating the surroundings with myriad hues and instantly dispersing the dark clouds. Kueki's voice turned icy, "Which Maha is present here?" A rainbow like a blessed land appeared in the sky. Within it sat a solemn, majestic golden figure, a black serpent coiled around its body. A long horse-like head, its eyes large and round, glowing pitch black, rose from its shoulders. It opened its great mouth and laughed. "Taoist friend Kueki, I have long heard of your great name." This Maha was truly hideous beyond comparison. Though it could terrify common folk, it was simply ugly in the eyes of cultivators of equal realm. Taoist Master Kyuki glanced at it, a look of disgust appearing on his face as his expression grew even colder, and he said, "So it is Maha Desi. What is this? Instead of staying in that wretched place of yours, do you intend to block me?" Maha Desi still wore a broad smile as he replied, "I have long heard your name and wish to exchange a few moves. I wonder whether your great Kui Convergence bronze sword is more formidable, or my Kongsijang demon bowl." A large purple bowl with a smooth surface appeared as he spoke. It was rimmed with dark violet edges, from which raging karmic fire poured forth. Daisy. Kyuki was widely learned, but Zhugong had spent many years in the Eastern Sea and did not recognize these Buddhist cultivators. It was only now, upon seeing this iconic Dharma artifact, that she recognized the figure before her, finally sorting out the cause and effect. So it is yet another enemy forged by Taoist Master Zaipai. She had deliberately prevented them from harvesting fate back then on the river, forcibly protecting Li Xuanfeng, causing many of their master monks to die and making them lose face. This Maha has nurtured that hatred ever since. That grand Taoist master was far too domineering in her later years and made too many enemies. Now that she has passed away, retribution has finally arrived. Her heart chilled with fear, yet she saw Kyuki sneer coldly as he drew his sword and leapt up, raising a swath of dark radiance. Divine ability flickered in midair as he shouted, "That haphazardly cobbled together treasure artifact of yours dares to compare itself with the spirit artifacts of my Ziyukui lineage. Then let us try." Ziyukui Dao lineage was strange and ever-changing, and he himself was equipped with spirit artifacts from head to toe. How could he fear this newly advanced Maha before him? He even believed there was a chance to injure Daisy and then proceed to search for Tinglin. He felt no fear, but Zhugong felt her scalp go numb, unsure whether she should flee or stay. Before she could think further, numerous figures appeared on both sides amid swirling white mist. Many faced massive golden bodies with 3 heads and 6 arms, accompanied by waves of chanting, emerged one after another. They were indeed the merciful ones of Maha Desi. These merciful ones were not as massive as the golden body in the sky, yet each bore a different expression as they gradually emerged from the great void, one af. Tur another. 1, 2, 4, 5. 5 merciful ones. Maha Desi was newly advanced, and these 5 merciful ones were likely his entire foundation. Even if he had more, it would not be many. The depth of his hatred was obvious from how he had deployed them all. 5 merciful ones acting together was already enough to threaten her life. Zhugong stood frozen in place, watching the 5 merciful ones appear one after another around her. There was none of Kyuki's imposing presence on her face, only utter distress, as waves of chill rose in her heart. It's over. Chapter 1338, Withdraw I. 5 merciful ones were a formation meant to contend with late-stage Purple Mansion realm cultivators. With proper coordination, they were enough to stall a grand Taoist master for a short time. How much more effective would they be against someone like her, who was merely at the early stage of the Purple Mansion realm? She could only activate her divine ability. 2 brownish-yellow lights appeared beneath her feet. She pressed her palms together a fist's distance from her vital organs, raised her head, and urgently recited in her heart, "High scorched earth, turn toward majestic light. Exhausted soil reveals its form, giving birth to metal and to yang." In the span of a single thought, a hazy layer of deep brown radiance rippled outward from her body, solid and steady like the earth itself, spreading until it enclosed her within. The moment the incantation was completed in her heart, the 5 Dharma artifacts of the surrounding merciful ones struck the majestic light at the same time. A violent, muffled boom rang out, echoing through the clouds. Zhugong's expression shifted slightly, clearly showing the strain. Although the single attribute of earth virtue was formidable, majestic earth was still inferior to manifest earth in being unbreakable like adamant and unshaken by thunder. What was worse was that Zhugong herself had an improper foundation. Her majestic earth was impure and tainted with the methods of devil cultivators. Once it was struck jointly by 5 Buddhist cultivators, the radiance immediately grew unstable, as faint strands of deep black chi seeped out. 2 of the merciful ones glared fiercely. One spat golden sand, while another spewed forth flames, both hurling their attacks at the radiance. Damn it! She had no experience fighting northern Buddhist cultivators and could only exert her divine ability. Multicolored light flared in her eyes. One hand rested at her chest, while the other covered her mouth with the back of her hand. After inhaling, she shouted sharply, "Ha!" The merciful one spewing flames beside her had no time to react. He cried out in pain and collapsed while covering his face like a mortal. A flaw instantly appeared in the 5-man encirclement. allowing her to seize the chance to evade. Her divine ability surged again as her figure scattered into flowing light that broke out of the encirclement. The merciful one who had been struck by the art was still bent over on his knees, golden blood spilling endlessly from his lips. He was truly panicked and flustered, yet the merciful one who spat golden sand remained calm, clearly experienced. Drawing his sword, he rose and warned, "It is the majestic earth technique called bestowal of the crown. Ride the wind and stay aloft. Do not touch the ground. You and I are Buddhist cultivators. The pain is heavier, but as long as your heart does not panic, it is not a severe injury." The one who spat golden sand was clearly the leader. The merciful one who had suffered the art endured the pain and rose upon the wind, immediately feeling somewhat better. Not far away, Taoist Master Zhugong's face darkened as she cast spells and silently cursed her luck. "That bald monk has sharp eyes." Taoist Master Zhugong had fortuitously attained the Tongxuan Dao lineage and indeed cultivated bestowal of the crown. However, she had been ignorant in her early years, with a mixed cultivation. Although she had changed her technique before reaching the Foundation establishment realm, many hidden dangers remained. Her repeated victories over powerful enemies owed much to bestowal of the crown. Now that it had been exposed in a single remark, it was like losing an arm. The spell art in her hands surged as she shouted, "Bald monk, try this move." She violently coughed up blood. A clump of majestic light mixed with specks of multicolored rosy mist flew out from her slightly parted crimson lips. Almost immediately, it smashed into the face of the flame-spewing merciful one who had been struck by the art, who let out a sharp shriek in midair. The merciful ones on both sides cried out inwardly in alarm and rushed toward him. They had not expected that Taoist Master Zhugong's shout was deliberate, meant as a feint to mislead them. The majestic light that seemed to fall before them instantly transformed into heavenly glow, while the Griya T void stirred. The true treasure yellow majestic light burst forth like a venomous serpent and lunged straight toward the back of the leading merciful one's head. "Target this one first. If I cannot cripple him, I will likely be surrounded and fall." She knew full well that she was no match for the combined strength of the five. Even seizing the initiative only meant she had one more divine ability than them, giving her a fleeting advantage. Thus she struck with extreme ruthlessness, with the resolve to fight to the death. Another small silver bell floated up from the sky and smashed down together with the majestic light. For a moment, three merciful ones were held in check. The merciful one leader had no choice but to raise the golden sword in his hand and force himself forward, facing the treasure yellow majestic light as he shouted, "Hold." Brilliant multicolored light filled the sky, faintly revealing the Buddhist land. The precious radiance descended like layers upon layers of floating gauze, falling one after another onto the majestic light with sizzling sounds. Boom! Yet the majestic light was like a burning ember dropped into cotton. It pushed through layers of resistance and finally smashed into the merciful one's Dharma body, drawing a heart-rending scream from him. The silver bell followed close behind and about to strike when the merciful one forcibly opened his eyes. Even as the majestic light tore several large holes through his Dharma body, he gritted his steel teeth and actually trapped the silver bell in his mouth. What good end could come from holding a spirit artifact in one's mouth? Not even the Dharma body of a merciful one, let alone body divine abilities, would dare to do such a thing. As expected, his eyes instantly burst into golden powder, and countless dark gold cracks appeared across his Dharma body. Zhugong felt no joy at all at the sight. Instead, she was shocked and enraged. The last merciful one, who had vanished earlier, had already crossed the great void and was smashing two golden hammers down at her head from behind. His three-headed, six-armed Dharma body produced two mirrors and a pair of wooden fish, locking her in place from both sides. So fast, such a powerful Dharma body. Only then did the female Taoist master realize that the one who had rushed in silently was the most skilled in combat among the five. Yet her spirit artifacts had already been deployed and could not be recalled in time. She could only draw her Dharma sword and fling out spirit shields from her sleeves to block. Clang! Taoist Master Zhugong's spell arts were passable, but the rest were clearly inferior. The two spirit shields struggled briefly in midair and released surging black chi. The blood-refined Dharma artifacts were quickly suppressed by the treasure light, and in the end, failed to block everything. The two mirrors released dazzling golden light that shone straight into her eyes. The Stole of the Crown was a pure spell divine ability. Unlike Heaven Venerating Gate, it provided no reinforcement to the Dharma body. How could Taoist Master Zhugong's eyes withstand such illumination? Sparks burst forth at once, and her eyes turned into hollow, charred sockets in an instant as two streams of scorched blood tears flowed down. At the same time, the silver bell burst out from the merciful one's abdomen, blowing the merciful one, who spat golden sand into fragments that scattered across the ground, turning into golden sand that rained from the sky. Boom! Imprisoning a spirit artifact within one's own body would only be more unbearable than what Zhugong herself suffered. Just like that, he returned to the Buddhist land. Yet the remaining four were not angry but delighted, immediately stepping through the great void to surround her. Taoist Master Zhugong had rarely fought northern Buddhist cultivators, but these merciful ones knew well how to deal with immortal cultivators. From the very beginning of the battle, they had already reached an unspoken understanding to trade lives for injuries. Their status as merciful ones lay in the Buddhist land. Death was death, all in the service of Daisy. Even after death, their Dharma bodies would be compensated. But what about Zhugong? How much leeway did she have? Although the Dharma body of a Purple Mansion Realm immortal cultivator was indeed less vital than during Foundation Establishment Realm, severe injuries sustained in battle would take at least a year or more to recover. So the hands of the four did not pause as soon as they completed the encirclement. They chanted sutras in unison, which resonated with the lingering injuries in her eye sockets, forcing bursts of golden fire to erupt and exploit the weakness of her frail Dharma body. Zhugong's heart turned cold as she realized she was already surrounded by four merciful ones. The piercing pain from her eyes still faintly interfered with her spellcasting, warning her. Of one thing, if I do not leave now, soon I may not be able to leave at all. The spell art in her hands continued to form seals, transforming into a radiance that wrapped around her and barely blocked the attacks of the four. Her spiritual sense drifted upward as she looked toward the Maha Daisy and Taoist Master Kyueki in the sky. The Taoist Master of Ziyuqi still wore black, one hand clasped behind his back. Before him, the great Qi Convergence bronze sword danced and whirled, appearing and vanishing as it transformed into countless phantoms that weaved through endless multicolored light. Meanwhile, the famed Kongsijang demon bowl of Maha Daisy was held in place in midair by a black tether. Though it repeatedly tried to break free, it was always a step too slow and remained restrained. Taoist Master Kyueki pinched a speck of dark light with his other free hand. Streams of radiance flew out one after another from it and fell in overlapping layers upon Daisy. The horse-faced Maha was beset by both the great Qi Convergence bronze sword and the dark light, relying solely on his Dharma body to barely maintain a stalemate. Clearly, compared to Zhugong's wretched state, Taoist Master Kyueki found his battle with Daisy far from difficult. Anxiety filled Zhugong's heart. The longer she endured, the less confidence she had. As the mana within her body continued to drop and her Dharma body suffered repeated injuries, she finally drew Taoist Master Kyueki's gaze. The Taoist Master was not surprised to see her struggling at every step. 3 divine abilities circulated in his hands, and the spell art he wielded grew increasingly formidable, battering Daisy until his expression gradually turned grim. Taoist friend Zhugong, hold on for just another 15 minutes and wait for my divine ability to be unleashed. Zhugong's heart sank at once. Before she could reply to Kyueki, the radiance around her grew ever dimmer. The merciful one who had just been wounded by mirror light spread his 6 arms, his eyes glowing gold and red, clearly having activated some secret art. As expected, after only a few exchanges, the golden fire in his eyes intensified. The radiance before her shattered apart with a dull boom. Zhugong drew another breath and set her divine ability into motion again. Oh! This time the distance was closer, and all 4 beside her erupted at once and froze briefly. The 6-armed merciful one nearest to her had a surge of golden blood gush from his nose. His eyes bulged in fury as he pursued again. Zhugong's silver bell moved to block him once more, yet the other 3 had already reached her. Blazing golden light still burned within her eye sockets, and the weakness of her Dharma body became apparent. Bestowal of the crown was clearly a divine ability, better suited for single combat than group battles. She grew flustered as she coughed up another mouthful of blood that scattered as golden light. But at this critical moment, Zhugong never expected a demon-subduing lotus covered in intricate patterns to burst out of the great void with dazzling golden radiance and strike her completely unguarded back. Boom! A cloud of mist exploded across the sky, accompanied by the crashing sound of earth collapsing. Rain dispersed, and broken stones and sand filled the heavens. Zhugong's face turned pale as golden light gathered to form her figure not far away. Her chest was hollow, revealing the landscape behind her through a lotus-shaped gap. Daisy, how could this be? The demon-subduing lotus did not spare her. This dazzling treasure artifact was far more powerful than the Kongsijang demon bowl. In an instant, it transformed into countless sharp petals that rained down upon her Dharma body. Zayu. At last, a black tether pierced out of the great void and blocked most of the lotus fragments. Dense dark light followed, binding the hidden precious radiance within the great void. Even so, Zhugong was struck by several petals and spat out a mouthful of blood as dizziness overwhelmed her. Endless white mist descended above Daisy's head, trapping him within. Taoist Master Kueki had clearly been forced to cast his technique ahead of time, allowing his body to manifest before Zhugong. The great Kui Convergence bronze sword pointed straight ahead, frightening the merciful ones into retreat. His gloomy gaze lingered on the dark gold demon subduing lotus, and a name surfaced in his mind, Zhelo. This is the three retributions world entering lotus. Meanwhile, Zhugong finally gained a moment to breathe. Flesh rapidly regenerated over the hollow wound in her chest. She paid no heed to anything else and fled into the great void in a single breath, vanishing from sight. Daisy, left alone in the sky, wore a broad smile and was clearly in excellent spirits as he said, "Taoist friend Kueki, you are still one step behind me." Taoist Master Kueki's expression was unpleasant. He swept his gaze across the monks and nuns before him and said nothing further as his face gradually turned cold. Disappointed, he stepped into the great void and vanished as well. How also? The horse-faced Maha descended from the sky in great triumph. The remaining four merciful ones dropped to their knees with a thud and shouted in unison, "Congratulations, my lord! Congratulations, my lord!" Daisy's expression slowly shifted from smug satisfaction to cold gloom. When he saw that one merciful one had died, and an old merciful one of many years at that, he felt a trace of heartache and said in a low voice, "Years of hatred are finally repaid a little today." If not for still keeping an eye on that missing old thing from the purple smoke gate, and worrying that acting too aggressively would provoke the supreme Yang Dao lineage into pulling out some hidden trump card in retaliation, there would have been no need for all this trouble. He slowly smothered the hatred in his eyes and lowered his head to look at the dark gold lotus covered in intricate patterns resting in his palm, feeling both greed and regret. What a pity. Such a fine treasure artifact, yet it does not belong to me. Let's go, follow me back. Chapter 1339, Withdraw, II. Great Void. Taoist Master Kueki walked through the air on his divine ability, his expression grim. Zhugong had suffered severe injuries, so she would certainly not show herself. Kueki had no personal relationship with Zhugong, and she would never allow her badly wounded self to be exposed before anyone, not even Kueki who had just saved her. This meant that even attempting to persuade the Taoist master from the Eastern Sea was impossible, making Kueki grow even more gloomy as he ground his teeth inwardly. Bestowal of the crown is no weaker than any Purple Mansion realm technique, but all of its abilities are aimed at a single target. It is extremely strong in single combat. She simply did not cultivate it deeply enough and ended up like this when facing a group of merciful ones. The three retributions world-entering lotus had also appeared far too abruptly. As a Taoist master of the great Ziyuqi temple, Kueki naturally knew what kind of Tao lineage bestowal of the crown belonged to. There was even an immortal foundation of bestowal of the crown within the great Ziyuqi temple itself. Kueki might even understand Zhugong's divine ability even better than she did. A perfectly good immortal Tao divine ability, yet cultivated into such an improper state. It seems she only obtained an incomplete Tao lineage. A majestic earth Tao lineage is not something so easily acquired. After observing for a short while, Kueki could already infer the origin of her divine ability and sighed inwardly. It looks like a substitute Tao rather than the orthodox Tao. Yet the Tongxuan Tao lineage is too powerful. Even a narrow road becomes a path reaching the heavens today, which allowed her to reach the Purple Mansion realm. His expression soon darkened. His eyes narrowed as he pinched his fingers and calculated. Finally, he muttered, "Zhelu is still probing. He may not dare to truly push Tinglin and Ningguan too far, but allowing the two of them to be trapped in the north, without enough manpower to strike back or reclaim their dignity, would severely damage the face of the Supreme Yang and only encourage the northern Buddhists to grow more insolent." Tinglin and Ningguan both held many hidden cards, but Buddhist cultivators excelled at laying formations to trap others. Once caught off guard, it was difficult to break free. Kueki was not afraid that anything would truly happen to them, but rather that this matter was deliberately meant to cause the supreme Yang Dao lineage to lose face. This cannot be allowed to end like this. The cultivators may be unwilling to interfere in Jiangbei affairs, but that does not mean you Buddhist cultivators can scheme against us at will. It is a pity that Hengzhu, because of what happened back then, became estranged and disheartened to the point of refusing to involve himself again. Otherwise, there would have been no need to endure such grievance. The Chen family has always been amicable and is not hard to persuade. Old Taoist Master Yuming is also easy to speak with. Taoist Master Shanbai by the Sea is on good terms with my family as well. All of them can be counted on. Taoist friend Ling Mei would very likely take action. Once he moves, this matter is already half settled. As long as Daisy's obstruction can be broken, Zhelu, no matter how formidable he is, cannot withstand attacks from both inside and out. With the reputation of the supreme Yang Dao lineage, so many years of connections, and the target being the infamous Zhelu, a single call to arms would naturally gather many Taoist masters. There is only one problem. Taoist masters Yuming and Shanbai are both near the Yue cultivating sect. They were once under the northern sect and the relatio. Enship has been awkward for a long time, since the Lord has gone to the outer heavens and the Yue cultivating sect sealing its mountain. The two of them may find it inconvenient to travel. When Taoist Master Kueki mentioned the Yue cultivating sect, his tone became unexpectedly complex, sounding both close and awkward. Yet when he referred to the true monarch of the Yue cultivating sect, the word Lord was spoken with deep respect. Yet the great void was utterly silent, with no one present at all, and the matter was passed over in a single sentence. Taoist Master Kueki then thought of that Taoist Master Zheajing by the lake, and he just happens to be absent. Divine abilities each have their own uses. Perhaps in single combat, Zheajing is inferior to Zhugong, but when fighting the merciful ones, heaven-venerating gate is far more useful than bestowal of the crown. Tinglin was right in her thinking. Li Ziming bears the Li surname after all. Even if the entire Li family might not be able to stir even half a ripple under heavenly glow, it is still good to avoid suspicion. It is just unfortunate that something like this has happened now fighting Buddhist cultivators. The Li family would certainly be willing to lend a hand, and there would be even more reason to call him back. Moongai's Lake. He rode the wind upward and moved through the great void without stopping for even a moment, heading south along the great void. When he emerged, he found a lake under torrential rain. Such violent weather clearly had the Li family on edge. Mana lights flickered across the lake, and one could even see many cultivators dressed in purple smoke gate attire. Taoist Master Kueki observed for a while before writing his divine ability down. He immediately encountered a man dressed in black with gray eyes and long brows. Upon seeing him, the man's eyes filled with shock. Riding the wind forward, he performed a grand salute with utmost respect and bowed as he spoke. "Greetings, my lord. I am Chen Yang of Moongaze. I was patrolling the lake and did not expect to encounter an immortal carriage. If my lord has any immortal instructions, please speak. I will certainly spur my mount and risk my life to deliver them." Kueki waved his sleeve and said casually, "Bring me to your family head." Those words already gave sufficient respect. This Taoist master clearly would not waste time flying slowly. Chen Yang felt the colors before his eyes flip, and he was already manifesting before the great hall. Kueki said nothing, and Chen Yang tactfully went inside to report. Kueki stood with his hands behind his back and examined the man's physiognomy. His divine ability held certain related subtleties, and he silently evaluated him. This man has a sinister appearance. When bent, he is a hound or hawk. When standing upright, he is still a man of substance. For the Li family to obtain such a servant is no less valuable than acquiring a fine Dharma artifact. Moongaze Lake gathers talent and accepts the capable. Its atmosphere and fortune far surpass those of the southern prefectures. No sooner had this thought arisen than a figure in crimson robes hurried out before the hall, lowering his brows and eyes as he spoke respectfully. "I do not know which Tao the Taoist master's immortal carriage hails from. I failed to welcome you properly and am deeply fearful. I beg your forgiveness." The Taoist master with flowing robes stepped inside, glanced appreciatively at the furnishings in the hall, took a seat in the main position, and raised his brows as he said, "Great Ziyukui Temple, Kueki." Li Zhongqian's guess had been correct in essence. He surmised that matters in the north had grown even worse and bowed respectfully in the hall. Kueki, however, observed him and frowned as he thought, "Li Xiaowei truly has some substance. Even this eldest son is hard to read. It is just that there are very few good figures among the direct lineage of the Wei's Li lineage." He quickly focused on the matter at hand. He looked at the teacup on the table without touching it and asked without preamble where his fellow Taoist Zheajing. Li Zhongqian did not know his intent, nor did he know whether this person had been summoned by Qianlizi. He did not add anything extra as he replied respectfully, "Taoist master, the ancestor should still be in the Eastern Sea." As for any request for aid or return mentioned by Qianlizi, he did not speak of it at all. Kueki merely traced the rim of the teacup with its jade lid once. His pale gray eyes sank as he said softly, "You must have sensed it as well. Something has happened in Jiangbei, with Buddhist cultivators taking the lead, retaliating against the Azure Pond sect and the Purple Smoke Gate. In recent years, Purple Smoke Gate has had complicated grievances with Buddhist cultivators. The troubles Ning Tianxiao left behind back then were not few. As for the matters in the north, Zhugong has been serious. Why injured and will not show herself? The one who injured her was Daisy, who is also the one who ambushed Tinglin. Do you know Daisy?" Li Zhongqian shook his head, and Kueki merely said, "Li Xuanfeng, he was the one responsible. Tinglin has now been ambushed, but I see that her life is not in danger. Presumably, they do not want her involved in Jiangbei affairs. I hope that fellow Taoist Jiajing returns. This is something your family cannot avoid. Taoist stared at the tea, his tone toward the two seeming even gentler than Zhugong's as he said, I understand your concerns. I will not ask you to involve yourselves in Jiangbei matters. On the contrary, having Jiajing take action against the Buddhist cultivators is precisely to prevent him from being forced to act later if Jiangbei spirals out of control. What is needed now is to strike the Buddhist cultivators hard. On this point, the Li family has surely harbored hatred toward them for a long time as well. Huoqi looked at the two of them quietly and spoke, whether from the standpoint of personal ties or the overall situation, rescuing Tinglin quickly is the choice that best serves Moongei's interests. It is the choice that allows Moongei's to avoid touching Jiangbei's affairs. If Jiajing extends a helping hand at this time, the supreme Yang Dao lineage will naturally remember it. He set down the jade cup in his hand and said softly, Moongei's can judge the weight of the matter for itself. Clearly, though he too wanted Li Ziming to return to Jiangnan, Huoqi's status and manner of persuasion far surpassed Qinlizi's. He had laid out the pros and cons plainly, making them all the more compelling. More importantly, this Taoist master Huoqi was an actual mover and shaker of the great Ziyuqi temple of the supreme Yang Dao lineage, a mid-stage purple mansion realm cultivator, who would gainsay his words. Chapter 1340, The Might of the Supreme Yang I. Li Zhongqian stepped back, bowed, and said, By the immortal decree of the honored upper sect, we will immediately convey this to the Taoist master. There was no reason not to. Now that Huoqi had spoken to this extent, there was no longer any room to stay uninvolved. Even if the matter were to be refused, Li Ziming would have to appear to personally refuse it. Moreover, the Taoist master had said that if assistance were given, the supreme Yang Dao lineage would remember it. At the same time, if they stood by and did nothing, the other side would remember it just the same. Li Zhongqian commanded, Go invite the elder and take out the family's jade talisman for use. The aloofness of the great Ziyuqi temple was well known, and its Dao lineage was also peculiar. Whether it was Hufu a few years ago or the present Huoqi, neither was gentle by nature. Li Zhongqian deliberately lowered his own standing by using the phrase honored, which made the Taoist master chuckle as he replied, You are being too polite. Though he said so, he was clearly quite satisfied. He took a sip of tea and continued, This matter will not shortchange Moongei's and Jiajing. Jiajing has only just achieved the Purple Mansion realm, and his divine ability is difficult to cultivate. He is one of our own, and this time he will not be acting alone. Li Zhongqian bowed again. Thank you, Taoist master. The supreme Yang Dao lineage shelters Jiangnan. We rely on its radiance and are deeply humbled. I will carefully convey your intentions and await the ancestors' decree. Huoqi responded with a quiet sound, and Li Zhongqian took advantage of his good mood to ask, However, the matter in Jiangbei involves many parties, and Taoist Master Zhugong has withdrawn after taking injuries. If there is no Taoist master presiding, I fear it may delay matters. Jiangbei. Moongei's lake lay by the river, and was not as far south as the great Ziyuqi temple, so concern over Jiangbei was only natural. Huoqi thought briefly before speaking. There is no need to worry about that. They will not be able to cross the river. At most, a few fate bearers will be drawn out. If they had been born in the south, they would have caused you trouble. Earlier, when Jiajing was not around, you might indeed have needed to worry. But once he returns, at worst he can tear open the great void and crush them to death with a single finger. Although the south also covets those few fate-bearers, Tinglin and Ningguan have both gone north. Who could possibly discover them faster than your family? Li Zhongqian immediately felt much more at ease as he saluted. Huoqi rose to his feet, gazing thoughtfully at the rain clouds as he pondered inwardly. Since this group of Buddhist cultivators has begun to stir things up, there is no need to show mercy. I will return to the temple, take out another spirit artifact, and head to Tongmo and Yuyang prefectures. Then I'll pay a visit to Taoist friend Ling Mei. The supreme Yang Dao lineage possess such deep reserves and such extensive connections that even the emptiness Dao only dared to hold back their two Taoist masters and did not dare to truly strike to kill. Huoqi had nothing to fear as he glanced down and said, When Taoist friend Jiajing returns, have him wait on the lake for a while. If he grows impatient, he may also come to Ziyuqi to find me. Huoqi drifted into the air. Chen Yang and Li Zhongqian prostrated themselves in a deep bow and only rose after a long while. Li Zhongqian shook out his robes, returned to the hall, and waved his hand, whereupon Chen Yang withdrew tactfully. So it really was a Buddhist cultivator. He fell silent for a moment as footsteps gradually came from both sides. Li Xuanxuan had received the news earlier and had already been waiting in the side hall. He stepped into the hall and Li Zhongqian frowned and said, Old elder, Taoist master Huoqi said, that the one who killed Lord Xuanfeng was Ma Hadesi. Have you ever heard of this person? The old man was first taken aback at the mention of Li Xuanfeng, then stroked his beard and said quietly, I have only heard that it was a purple-black treasure bowl. Li Jianqian let out a breath and finally relaxed. After giving the old elder a brief explanation, he sank into the main seat and shook his head. At least, if the Taoist master can return, we will no longer need to be constantly on edge, nor use the minds of those at the Foundation Establishment realm to plan matters of the Purple Mansion realm. All arrangements will then have someone to take charge. Li Xuanxuan still looked somewhat worried, but Li Jianqian was clearly much more relaxed as he said softly, the Great Void is vast. Returning from the Eastern Sea would take half a day to a full day at the quickest, and even at the slowest it would not differ by many hours. Invite the sisters and elders back and prepare to kneel in the hall to receive him. As it should be, Li Xuanxuan also came to terms with it. Setting other matters aside, being able to see Li Ziming after so many years truly pleased him. He shook his head helplessly and said, Zhuming has been confined for so long and has suffered enough. Once matters are properly arranged, it will be just right to release him. Indeed, Li Jianqian smiled in agreement, secretly weighing things in his mind as he thought, the day of the sacrificial rites is also drawing near. If the Taoist master returns and the grand formation can be set up, there will be no need for such turmoil this time. Unexpectedly, just as the orders had been passed on, Buzhai arrived at the hall ahead of everyone else. He saluted Li Xuanxuan and then reported respectfully, Family head, the capital Immortal Dao marketplace has been attacked. The formation was shattered and collapsed. 3 direct descendants of the Guan family have died, and the losses are severe. Cultivators of all levels have been injured, and the guarding cultivator Song Yunbai has been seriously wounded and gone missing. Li Jianqian raised an eyebrow and asked, such heavy losses, who did they clash with? Buzhai replied respectfully, it was a group of devil cultivators. They are connected to the earlier devil disciple, who is also among them. The North reported that the leader has an extremely high cultivation, having already reached the pinnacle of the Foundation Establishment realm. Even Guan Gongxia was at a slight disadvantage when exchanging blows with him. Moreover, it was a sudden attack. By the time the reinforcements from the capital Immortal Dao arrived, the devil cultivators were already retreating. Although the capital Immortal Dao did not suffer catastrophic losses, its morale is extremely low, with the entire gate filled with anxiety. Li Jianqian frowned in confusion. Devil cultivators. Buzhai continued softly, it is said that the devil cultivator has a life-bound cultivation with a blood-light treasure mirror of astonishing power. It is suspected to be an ancient Dharma artifact. The Northern Lord warned that the wilderness should be watched closely. Guan Gongxia was naturally not acting out of kindness. He simply meant to remind them that teeth grow cold when the lips were gone. However, once Li Ziming returned, the Li family would be firmly settled. Li Jianqian replied casually, go back and reply, saying that we thank them for the reminder and will certainly pay attention to the wilderness. Buzhai quickly nodded and withdrew. As the hall doors opened, more people gathered inside. The matter of Li Ziming's return had not been publicized. In truth, only a few core direct descendants came to the hall. If Li Ziming failed to return as agreed, it would be an even more terrifying matter. Thus, even Li Ziming did not come to the hall in advance to welcome him. The ritual lamps were lit as the sky gradually darkened. Everyone waited quietly. Li Minggong stood solemnly before Ti. He hauled the lamplight, casting shifting light and shadow across her features. They waited until deep into the night, when at last a faint, gentle glow emerged from the dark lake. All sounds fell away as this illusory radiance transformed into a man wearing a white golden Taoist robe. The man had well-proportioned features and a medium build. A point of heavenly light shone brilliantly between his eyebrows. His hands were clasped behind his back, and there was no overwhelming aura about him. Instead, as he landed before the hall, he seemed to let out a slight breath of relief. Everyone immediately bowed down together and greeted him in unison, greetings, Taoist Master. Only then did the Taoist Master stroll forward. He first went to support Li Xuanxuan and helped the elder sit down, then took his seat at the main position. He glanced around, as if checking which faces were missing. He looked at Li Jianqian, then examined Li Qiuan, and sighed with emotion as he said, you siblings have now reached the Foundation Establishment realm. The days of Qi cultivation realm from back then still seem vivid before my eyes, yet now you have already become pillars. The two bowed to him. As the brilliant bright yang radiance shone down, everyone felt as though the ground beneath their feet had become solid.